and many of the people around him were attending to him. What did it look like? He was wearing a gray T-shirt and a khaki color pants, and he was just out of energy, and he was just standing there. He didn't run away or anything. He was just standing there, and the security police, I think, such people were there to surround him, but he didn't even attempt to run, and he just got arrested.
You heard from an eyewitness over there saying that the gunman didn't even attempt to run from the spot after having committed the crime. He stood there lifelessly before the police, of course, overpowered him and got custody of him, immediately arresting him on charges of attempted murder. Those images of the gunman, as you can see, videos that have been accessed by India Today from the ground itself, standing by over there. In the background, as the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe can be seen in the foreground making his campaign speech. Now, in a new despicable law by China, its nationalists are celebrating the shooting of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Now, even as the world is praying for Abe's recovery, China is lauding the loss of its enemy. The Chinese social media was flooded with celebratory texts and ill-timed jokes wishing Abe's death. Many Chinese nationalists were seen cheering the assassination bid. Some Chinese users, in fact, wanted to congratulate and reward the apprehended shooter, hailing him as a hero. Some comments also wanted the present Japanese Prime Minister and his Korean counterpart to be assassinated in a similar fashion. Chinese mouthpiece Global Times has meanwhile blamed right-wing forces in Japan for the attack on former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. China says the attack on Abe can accelerate the revision of pacifist constitution and cause ripple effect to foreign policy like ties with US and China. So in an absolutely despicable law over there, China and its citizens seem to be celebrating this assassination bid. Them, of course, congratulating the assailant, the gunman who has been taken into custody by Japanese police. Not very shocking, this reaction that is coming in from China. In fact, Shinzo Abe had taken a very strong anti-China policy as well. He, in fact, was instrumental in forming the Quad as well, the four-nation grouping between India, US, Japan, and Australia as well, which basically intended to take on security-wise China in the Indo-Pacific region. Shinzo Abe, of course, a very pragmatic and realistic leader is what experts describe him as, someone who has contributed majorly to Japanese democracy, a big proponent of democracy, and someone who, of course, propounded foreign relations and took India-Japan foreign relations to newer heights. Geeta Mohan, our foreign affairs editor, is in fact joining us live right now. Geeta, the kind of reaction that is coming in from China, absolutely not surprising. And in fact, that quote from Global Times, the mouthpiece of China, very, very shocking, but not surprising at the least.
Absolutely not surprising. China has been gunning for leaders, nationalist leaders such as Shinzo Abe for a very long time now. They have been real critics of any policy that Shinzo Abe not just propounded, but also propagated. And the reason why we see the kind of messaging, it's unfortunate. While they should be expressing deep shock and it should be disconcerting to have a country such as Japan, known to be very safe, to have a leader attacked in the manner in which Shinzo Abe was attacked. But instead, they're talking about the larger policy of the Indo-Pacific that Shinzo Abe was one of the architects of, and how Japan might look at a revision of those policies. So certainly not going something that will not go down well with the global community. But a brazen China using its mouthpiece, this is not the government speaking, but a Chinese affiliated media organization, putting out statements citing experts, so to say, because they're not, some of them have not been named, citing experts and putting out views that in all probability the administration would have wanted to put out. So disconcerting, disturbing, but something that certainly is not has not shocked us, because unexpected lines to not just critique Abe, but also to say that now maybe they look at a revision of their policies, including foreign policy and ties with, it specifically mentions China and the US.
Right. Geeta, for the benefit of our viewers, just break this down for us. You, of course, were, quoting those so-called experts that Global Times seems to be quoting right now. One of the statements from those so-called experts, unnamed experts, that Global Times has cited, says the attack on Abe may accelerate the revision of pacifist constitution and cause ripple effect to foreign policy, like ties with China and the US.
Well, that's a very important one. If they're talking about revision of their policies, pacifist policies, we have to look at Article 9 of the Constitution. Now, we know that Shinzo Abe, for a very long time, Polumi, has been seeking a revision of Article 9. What does Article 9 really pertain? Article 9 is a post-Second World War addition to the Japanese Constitution, wherein Japan does not have the right to have its own forces, military forces. It has a right to defend, but does not cannot hold or have active military contingent. But Abe broke that, so to say, rule in many ways, then one by sending forces in an unprecedented manner for peacekeeping operations, so on and so forth, in many places of the world. But this certainly has been a niggling area and issue for Japan, wherein the United States of America pledges support and security and defense of Japan, something that has did not go down well with many people in Japan looking at that stance. So that's certainly something that they were looking at reviving. Over here, maybe there is a layer to that article as well, where China is saying that maybe you will now look at the larger perspective of not using the United States of America and defending yourself, or having your own forces, even if it has to do with tackling China. Having said that, there are layers and nuances to how they're looking at the attack. They are now trying to rub it in. Now, that certainly is not something that that any country or any important publication of a country should be doing. Having said that, yes, Japan certainly will be looking at a few things for sure. Whether if it is defending its own country and having its own forces or not, that's a major decision and something that Japan has been looking at and has been battling for a very long time. It certainly is going to look within when it comes to its own security apparatus, for its leadership, the leaders, the events that are being held, because this is not a man who's unstable, follow me. This is a man who served in their maritime forces, who has been a part of a military contingent, so to say, and knows how to use weapons. He is just one of many who knows and has learned the skill, has been trained in using weapons. The reports that suggest that it could very well be made at home and not bought off the shelf. Some say it's a licensed gun.
Right.
There is no clarity on exactly what that is. But the fact that there could be many others, and a disgruntled citizen cannot go ahead and shoot a leader, a former prime minister. So certainly concerning, but disconcerting voices coming in from China.
Disconcerting voices coming in from China. Geeta, stay on with us. Dr. Roger Liu, Associate Professor, Flame University, is joining us live as well right now. Dr. Liu, thank you so much for joining us on India Today, sir. How do you react to this absolutely shocking incident, and what does this mean, sir? What does this mean largely for Japan?
Well, I'm shocked to learn about the news this morning that Shinzo Abe was assassinated. Well, Shinzo Abe is very important because he is the planner and he gave birth to the idea of Quad and Indo-Pacific strategy. If everybody just remembers, in 2007, actually, he launched a talk in the Japanese Diet, the convergence of two seas. That is the joining together of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So he actually is a planner of the Quad. So he is still very important, although he has stepped down as the prime minister, the longest-serving prime minister combined in the post-war political history of Japan. He is still the leader of the biggest faction in the Japanese ruling party, LDP, that consists of 94 representatives in the Japanese Diet. So he is still very important.
Dr. Liu,
And now,
I'll just ask you to hold on for a moment. We just have some report which is coming in right now. Reports now suggesting from the ground in Japan that the suspect has told the police that he was dissatisfied with the former leader, with Shinzo Abe, and that he aimed to kill. That's the latest that we're getting from the questioning which is currently underway of the gunman who has been taken into custody from the spot itself. Tetsuya Yamagami, a 41-year-old, has now told the police that he was dissatisfied with Shinzo Abe and he aimed to kill. Dr. Liu, coming back to you, apologize for interrupting you over there. Please go on.
Yeah, so I think, well, Shinzo Abe is very important in international politics. So with his assassination, we don't know what will happen to him, but, well, this will deliver a big shock to the Japanese, not only to the domestic political situation of Japan, but also in the international politics as well. Because Abe will be a stabilizer for the current Japanese government in the inauguration of Quad. And with his disability, at least for now that we know that, well, for the future, we hope that the Japanese government can still stick to the Quad. I think now as the situation goes, with the rising of China as a threat and the awakening of the Japanese and the U.S. government, I think Quad will still be here.
Okay, Quad will still be here. We'll, of course, discuss that at length as well. Dr. Liu, request you to stay on with us. Christian Martini is at the spot in Nara City. He's reporting for India Today. He, of course, is bringing us all the little details of the investigators that are at the spot currently collecting evidence as well. Christian, reports are, of course, suggesting, as you were telling us earlier as well, that the suspect, who is currently in police custody, has told the police that he was dissatisfied with the former leader Shinzo Abe and that he aimed to kill. What more can you tell us about the questioning which is underway, Christian?
Well, there's one thing that you might wanna know. We don't know again, like how truthful it is, but 2:47 local time, apparently Abe is being going on in the ICU units, and these are some reports coming out. There might be surviving chances for him, whether just a few minutes ago, like we would give him almost for not being able to survive. So this is one thing, and let's hope to continue to have those updates from the ICU units here in Nara. But as we see at the moment, they are still working on the very on the shooting site. You see, they put their marks all over the road, all over this crossing road. So from here, from this perspective, you can actually see it better. You can see there's the train right there and the station. So this is like a V line right at the exit of the north side of the station. And there's these investigators are scrambling now for marking everything that it's can be marked. Whatever they found there, evidence from the shooter or evidence from the gun itself. Then they are still taking measures, and this thing doesn't seem to stop. Actually, so more people have come from the investigations. At this time, it doesn't seem like it's weird. They're all wearing. So they're actually searching for genetic material, I'm sure, because they're all wearing masks and they're keep something for their heads. So they're also trying to find some. See, right here we see an investigator right there looking inside this bush for something, maybe shrapnel from the shotgun. We don't know, but it's this is live investigation at the moment right here. And then over there we're having these other people, somebody bringing a box there. Probably a cooler box for probably material they have to be analyzed and kept in the frozen for for not deteriorating during the transport. But yeah, this investigation is live and well going on at the moment here at the site.
Right. So that investigation currently underway on the ground. As you can see, those investigators in blue suits, hazmat suits, who are in fact at the spot right now, who are, of course, collecting evidence as we speak. Christian Martini is, of course, bringing us those live reports. Dr. Roger Liu is also with us, Associate Professor at the Flame University. So, one of the things that the suspect reportedly has told the police during his questioning is that he was dissatisfied with Shinzo Abe, the former leader. Were there any policy decisions or any reasons for which Shinzo Abe was unpopular on the ground?
Well, I don't think he is unpopular, but well, we still need to explore what actually behind that assassin's intention. As I know that he expressed that he is not happy about Shinzo Abe, but not politically. So we have to find out. But Shinzo Abe can be a controversial figure because first, he supports the more aggressive or more constructive roles of Japan in international politics. So like he proposed the revision of the 9th article of the Japanese Constitution, which it gives Japan more active roles in peaceful participation or strategic participation in regional affairs. That's the first thing. Second thing is that Abe is a right-wing politician, so he proposed that Japan should be more pro. Not imperialism, but the role of Japan's emperor should be more. And Japan should be more active. So I think for the left-wing elements in the Japanese politics, a lot of people are not happy about that. But taking assassination is another way. I think this is a terrorist attack towards the Japanese politicians. So I think we should watch closely the development of the Japanese politics, whether there's a rising of this kind of dissatisfaction, not only from one person, but from some elements as well.
Absolutely. You're saying something extremely important over there. You're, of course, calling this a terrorist attack. You're calling this a terror attack. And you're also saying that there should be a watch on Japanese politics to see if there is a rise in this form of extremist acts or this sort of sentiment on the ground as well. Dr. Liu, I'll ask you something about which I was, of course, speaking to my colleague Geeta as well earlier about. You know, the Global Times, the Chinese mouthpiece, has just put out a quote which citing some sort of an expert. It just says expert, and I quote over here, right-wing forces in Japan may become more active and tout war again amid economic downturns, social divisions. The attack on Abe may accelerate the revision of pacifist constitution and cause ripple effect to foreign policy like ties with China and the US. How do you read that, sir? If you can make us elaborate on that and explain to us what exactly is China trying to say.
Well, I think China has the reason to worry about that, but it's still too early to tell from this time, the point of time, because, like we said, this is apparently this is conducted by a left-wing element. At least his idea is from the left wing, not the right wing. So we don't know how the right wing will react to that. But the reaction of China is very, we have to focus on that because, China has been not happy about Shinzo Abe's strategic planning, especially on the Quad and Indo-Pacific. And China has been worried about the active role that Japan is going to play for the future. So, and after that, after the attack and assassination, actually, we have read about the news that the Chinese netizens has expressed some kind of celebratory, attitudes towards that. And This is not very good for the two societies to, face each other because the Japanese society have been in dissatisfaction level of the Chinese society has been high. So after that, I think this is, going to be a further stimulant of the two countries.
Right. Dr. Roger Liu, Geeta and Christiana, I'd request you to stay on with us. Here are the top developments of as far as this dastardly attack on former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are concerned. Now, former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe continues to be in a critical condition. He was shot at during a campaign speech in Nara city. A visibly emotional Prime Minister Kishida confirmed that doctors are doing everything they can to save Abe. The man who shot at Shinzo Abe has been identified as 41-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. Japanese police have confirmed that Yamagami is an ex-maritime self-defense officer. He shot former Prime Minister Abe from behind, reportedly with a shotgun. The assassin is a resident of Nara city. Tetsuya has been charged with attempt to murder and is currently being questioned by the police. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also expressed his concern over the shooting of his dear friend Shinzo Abe. Taking to Twitter, he also extended his support to Abe and his family. The Prime Minister said he is deeply distressed by the incident. World leaders, including United Kingdom's caretaker Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, expressed their shock over the attack on former Prime Minister Abe. The White House has also released a statement saying, and I quote, "We are shocked and saddened to hear about the violent attack. We are closely monitoring the reports," unquote. While the entire world is praying for Shinzo Abe, China has shockingly celebrated the attack. Chinese social media users hailed the assassin as a hero and celebrated the attack on the former Japanese Prime Minister. Abe always took a hard stance on Taiwan and time and again refused to give in to China's pressure during his tenure as Prime Minister. Those are images that we're bringing to you from what happened earlier this morning at 11:30 a.m. local time in Nara city in western Japan. Moments before and after when former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot at from behind by a lone gunman who has been taken into custody by the police, is being questioned. He reportedly has now told the police that he was dissatisfied with Shinzo Abe. Why exactly unknown, but he was dissatisfied with Shinzo Abe and his intent was to aim and kill today, as he, of course, fired 2 shots at the former Prime Minister of Japan, who is described to be in a critical condition. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, in fact, addressed the press as soon as he landed in Tokyo. He was away from the capital campaigning himself for the very crucial upper house elections in Japan on Sunday. He traveled back to Tokyo, addressed the media at his residence, and he said that this, of course, was a barbaric attack. He was visibly emotional, as well as he, of course, shared details with the media, whatever was available with him at the moment. He said that the former Prime Minister is receiving treatment in a hospital and everything is being done in order to ensure that he survives this very brutal attack. Two gunshots, as you can hear in that video very, very clearly. A very, very clear video there, viewers, of what exactly happened in Nara city this morning. Shinzo Abe mid-speech, making his campaign speech when the first gunshot was fired. It appears it was with that second gunshot that he collapsed at the spot where he was and was then immediately rushed to hospital. Initially, CPR was given to him and then seems like a video which was possibly being made by an onlooker capturing Shinzo Abe making that speech. The motive behind the shooting is unknown, but two gunshots, viewers, as you can see and hear in that video, being fired. Christian Martini is now joining us live from Nara city, from in fact the spot where this incident took place. And that video, of course, Christian, that we're showing to our viewers right now on their screens shows very clearly that two gunshots were fired, two loud explosions heard, and the smoke as well can be seen in that video. The former Prime Minister seems to have been mid-speech when, in fact, the first gunshot was fired. There was silence suddenly because everyone was caught completely off guard, and then the second gunshot being fired, which seems to have critically injured the former Prime Minister, and he collapsed at the scene. Christian.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, go on.
At the moment, it seems that the investigating teams have finished with what they were supposed to do. As a matter of fact, you opened up the streets. I want to show it to you here. They reopened it up, and the people who are going to take on the station, they are being let pass again. And there is no more fences blocking the passage at this moment. Not for the passerbys anyway. Now it seems like there's some policemen maybe trying to get the traffic started on. So I think the investigation is it's pretty much, it looks pretty much over. As you can see, people are coming through what was just a few minutes ago guarded fences, and so now as you have people coming through, I guess the investigation is over. So we can actually go down there.
Right. Christian, please proceed. Please do go down to the site if it's open now for, of course, for the people, for the common citizenry to, in fact, walk past. And if traffic has been opened, please do go down to the site and show us the exact site where this happened and where it was that the former Prime Minister was standing and making his campaign speech, and where it was that the assailant was standing. Christian, of course, will take a few moments there before he reaches the ground. He, of course, was giving us a higher view of the site where the investigators were, of course, collecting evidence all this while. Of course, trying to piece together exactly what happened, how it transpired, what were the sort of loopholes which were exploited by the assailant. But that video there showing you what exactly happened. Two gunshots fired, two loud explosions clearly heard in that video, viewers, and you can virtually see the smoke as well, so you know those two gunshots were fired as well. Watch this. That seems to be a video that maybe an onlooker who was listening in to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was making as he made his campaign speech. He was mid-speech when those gunshots were fired at him from very close range. Christian, of course, is reporting for India Today. He's reporting from the site of the crime itself, literally from where that video has been made. Christian, if you can show us around, if you've reached the site itself, if you can show us around the spot and what exactly you see around you, where possibly the former Prime Minister was standing, where was this assailant standing, how did the entire incident transpire? If you could recreate that for our viewers. Christian.
Yeah, I'm right here. We're walking towards the spot. And now, as you can see, because of so many people gathered, you got people trying to get it on the less chaotic terms. It's incredibly crowded right here, but this is the spot. This is right the spot.
Okay. Sorry. No.
So you can see there's plenty of water because there's a lot of blood. So there was a lot of blood here, and so this is exactly where police is starting to push. It's starting to be a bit of a nuisance actually. So the water has been thrown all over here where the shooting happened. Now they don't let us stand here, but this is exactly where the shooter took it from. But yeah, police is not letting anybody any closer any longer. I don't know why, because the fences are all gone. The investigation is over. I don't know for what reasons. Not to have like journalists coming close to the site, which is it's very unusual. Honestly, it's very unusual. I think this has to do with some sort of form of respect for the Prime Minister.
Viewers, because the exact spot where the crime took place. Christian is standing there showing us those pictures of, in fact, water that seems to have been poured on the road, because he, of course, is reporting that there was a lot of blood loss that Shinzo Abe, of course, suffered as a result of that gunshot injury. Christian, stay on with us. These are some of the defining images of Japanese Prime Minister was shot at in Nara city. He is the former Prime Minister of Japan. While he was making a campaign speech, he collapsed as soon as he was shot at. The shooter has been identified as 41-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. He is the former member of Japan's maritime self-defense group. The shooter was apprehended immediately. The gun used to shoot Shinzo Abe has also been recovered. The shooter was also seen lurking around the street just before he shot at Shinzo Abe. Abe collapsed after being shot at. Reports say he was bleeding and displayed no vital signs. His condition is said to be critical. Absolutely shocking news that has come in this morning from Japan's Nara city. At 11:30 a.m. local time, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was on a campaign trail, was making a speech just outside the train station in Nara city, was shot at twice by a lone gunman who was immediately apprehended from the site by the police, is currently being questioned by the police. The gunman is said to be 41-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami, who in fact has a background in Japan's maritime self-defense group. Christian Martini is reporting for India Today from on ground. He is at the site of the crime itself. What happened. Christian, of course, you've been describing to our viewers. Is there a possibility for you to speak to some of those onlookers? Because now the people have been allowed to, of course, cross the site. Passers-by have been allowed. The traffic has been opened as well. Is there a possibility to speak to some people and understand from on ground what the Japanese people are, of course, feeling about this very shocking and tragic incident?
Well, I already spoke to a few people, and what I can gather is there's a strong feeling for what happened. It's, the kind of bad publicity that Abe got during his tenure was it's really something that doesn't bear the reality, because I spoke to a few people and they're all really, really saddened by what happened. I even met a guy, which is an high school, daigakse, which is a university student, second year. And he even met Abe just a couple of weeks ago in Osaka. And he was really excited. I mean, he was excited when he met him. It was really sad now. But it was really really saddened by the news. It was really, and it's something very unusual to see this towards politicians. Especially the young people, the young Japanese, they are really detached from politics. They are not at all in touch with politics, not with what's going on, not with anything any major even discussions that are going on. They never really get on the mouth of people. There's one of those things that in Japan you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, and you don't talk about love. It's one of those three things. But in case of different, like when you have a young guy, a 21-year-old guy who went to meet Abe during one of his speeches, that's something that it's quite unusual. Again,
absolutely. Christian, of course, they're reporting from on ground in Nara city. Christian, stay on with us. We'll, of course, come back to you. We'll give you these few moments to go out there, speak to people, maybe gather more details about what exactly happened this morning in Nara outside the train station. Those images, of course, viewers, we're leaving you with those images, multiple videos emerging of what exactly happened in Nara this morning when a lone gunman opened fire and shot at former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, critically injuring him. He's currently receiving treatment in a hospital, and Prime Minister Kishida has said he hopes he survives.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India Today. You are...
So a new study in India says that couples who have more sex will have a harder time in getting pregnant. Why is it? Well, this is because more sex can impact the male sperm count. A study by the researchers of Kasturba Medical College, MAHE Manipal and the University of Münster, Germany looks at the relation between the length of abstinence and its impact on the male sperm fertility.
Semen quality plays a very important role in establishing pregnancy in partners, and in about 50% of the cases, the infertility is due to male factor. And one of the reasons for male factor infertility is poor quality sperm.
The team of fertility experts from India and Germany looked at the association between the gap of ejaculations as well as the impact it had on sperm fertility in at least 10,000 men. The study's results show that men with normal sperm count should have at least 2 days of abstinence between their ejaculatory cycles, and those that do not have a good sperm count or have low fertility or motility sperm should maintain a gap of at least 6 to 5.
Today is, the launch to the world of a fully operational urban airport. The first time ever in the world that there's an operational piece of infrastructure of this kind.
I think you'll see some operations this decade, but I think the 2030s will really be the decade of advanced air mobility, and you'll really start to see this be more ubiquitous from that point on.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
Kerala public health. All political parties traveling from different parts.
Armed with facts,
Looking at political back.
she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
are watching India Today.
Co-powered by The World Comes Together at Sharda University. In association with Green Lamb Laminates, Har Gustakhi Saaf.
Good afternoon. You're watching Lunch Break here on India Today. I'm Akshata Nandagopal, getting you all the updates pouring in on the shooting in Japan. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe remains in a critical condition. The updates on his condition as well as the latest on the shooter coming your way. Let's begin with the headlines. Former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe shot at in Nara city while giving a speech, airlifted to hospital. Japan Prime Minister Kishida says his condition is critical and prays for his survival. Shinzo Abe's attacker arrested, identified as 41-year-old Yamagami Tetsuya, who's a local of Nara city. He admits that he aimed to kill Abe. Prime Minister Modi prays for the recovery of his dear friend. Shinzo Abe says deeply distressed by the attack. World leaders come together to condemn the attack. In a new despicable low, Chinese nationalists celebrate the shooting of former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, hail the assassin as a hero. And let's begin by rounding up all the bigger updates coming in this hour on the attack on former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He remains critical after being shot twice. This has been confirmed by the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. The 41-year-old shooter, the man who attacked Shinzo Abe, has been arrested. He's currently being questioned. And reportedly, the shooter has admitted that he aimed to kill Abe, that this was an assassination attempt. So this is the big update that's coming in on the story. The shooter is currently being questioned. Yamagami aimed to kill Shinzo Abe. And footage that's emerging now with every passing hour shows how he was waiting patiently for Shinzo Abe to begin speaking, and then from behind shot him twice in the chest. Christian Martini Grimaldi is joining us live. He's been reporting for us for the last few hours from the site where Shinzo Abe was shot at. Christian, the kind of information that's trickling in right now, you know, you were with us when we first reported that Shinzo Abe was shot at. Now we've got a lot more information that's streaming in on the shooter as well. And it's been confirmed that this was an assassination attempt, that he had one target, Shinzo Abe. He wanted to kill him.
Yes. So, you know, we know this, we speculated if it was political, and then it was political. As a matter of fact, at the moment, I'm right on top of where this incident happened. I'm right. This is the right actual spot. This is where the water to wash the blood of Abe was put. And he was standing right here when doing the speech, right behind these bars, when he was doing the speech, and the guy came from behind. He came from behind there, and he aimed at him and shot him. So he would be standing right here and looking in front of him, where the crowd would be gathered in this guardrail, as you see it right there. And so it was a really small place. We know that for sure from testimony that I've seen, that we're around 30 people, not more than that. So it was really a small number of people that were gathered here to hear Abe. And some of the people that I spoke to, even the people didn't like Abe. They really incredibly feel devastated by this news. You know, and again, this tells you a lot about the Japanese spirit. You know, when it comes to situations like this, that you don't have people cheering for political purposes because somebody on their opposing political party got an accident. On these situations, all the Japanese stand together and they mourn together. And so this tells you also Abe, again, like even if it was portrayed as this extremist, and he had these issues with the constitution, which might be part of the motive, I would suggest that why this guy tried to kill him. Because in the mentality of a common man, Abe is the guy who tried to put forward the Article 9 of the Constitution, which is the one that would allow the Japanese military to be able to resort in attack without having any sort of provocation, which would something that would be totally revolutionary concerning the constitution of Japan, which makes it a country, a peaceful country with no army of its own, and that is why the Japanese army is called Jeitai, Self-Defense Forces, and it's not called the Japanese army yet.
Okay, Christian, just stay on with me, for our viewers, and I'd like to come back to you because you're right there at that spot where former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot at. So stay with us, Christian. Let's get you all the updates and that briefing by the current Japanese Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida. Visibly very emotional. He's confirmed that Shinzo Abe's condition is currently critical. Abe was transferred via medevac to the Nara Medical University Hospital following the attack. Shinzo Abe reportedly even suffered a cardiac arrest. He was unfortunately showing no vital signs after the attack. The Japanese government, which condemned this attack, saying the harshest words isn't enough to condemn what's happened, has created a crisis management team and a task force at the PMO office in Tokyo. The government has recalled all cabinet ministers who were out campaigning for the upper house election, as was Mr. Shinzo Abe as well. Remember, these elections are scheduled to happen in Tokyo back on Sunday. Shinzo Abe collapsed while delivering the speech for the election campaign on the street at around 11:30 in the morning. Videos show Abe collapsing after being shot from behind by a shotgun. The sound of the gun going off can be heard twice very clearly, and at this point it's been confirmed that Shinzo Abe was shot at twice. The 41-year-old shooter, Yamagami Tetsuya, has been taken into custody for attempting to murder Shinzo Abe. The weapon also has been seized. It's a shotgun that's wrapped around in tape because it looks like the shooter tried to pretend or make it look like it was a camera. Prime Minister Modi has also put out a message on Twitter saying that he's distressed to hear about the news about his dear friend Shinzo Abe and prays for his speedy recovery.
So this is near Yamato Saidaiji Station, north side, Nara Prefecture, and this is the site where Abe was shot. And I'm about 100 meters away from where he was shot. So this is the map. This is around the north side of the Yamato Saidaiji Station. I'm standing around here, and Abe was shot at this place. So Abe, around 11 p.m., he came out from the north side of the Yamato Saidaiji Station, standing here to give out speech. However, around a bit past 11:30 p.m., a man approached and two gunshot-like sounds were heard, and then Abe collapsed onto the ground with bleeds.
Elections are being held. This is a very foundation of democracy. And such an incident took place. It is barbaric and malicious, and it cannot be tolerated. We will do everything we can. I would like to use the most extreme words available to condemn this act.
Today, shortly before noontime today, in Nara Prefecture, Abe Shinzo, former Prime Minister of Japan, has been
अजिबात नाही कारण ते करण्याची गरजच नाहीये हे मी मुद्दामून तुम्हाला सर्वांना एकत्र बोलून ठामपणे सांगतोय की शिवसेनेपासून धनुष्यबाण कोणीही वेगळा करू शकत नाही हे घटनात्मक किंवा कायदेशीर जे अभ्यासक आहेत त्यांच्याशी बोलून मी आपल्याला सांगतोय. उगाचच माझ्या मनातलं बरं वाटावं म्हणून बोलत नाहीये. दुसरे जे काय फोटो सगळे येत आहेत की एवढे नगरसेवक गेले, तेवढे नगरसेवक गेले. मुळामध्ये आता सगळ्या पालिका या आता अस्तित्वात नाहीयेत. त्याच्यामुळे हे म्हटलं तर त्यांचे व्यक्तिगत कार्यकर्ते असू शकतात की त्यांच्याच आग्रहामुळे मी माझ्या निष्ठावान सैनिकांना बाजूला ठेवून यांच्या शिफारशीमुळे त्यांना उमेदवारी दिली होती. अशी जी काही त्यांची लोक असतील ती गेली असतील. मला आज देखील एका गोष्टीचा अभिमान आहे की साधी लोक येत आहेत. अगदी काल परवाकडे आपण बघितलं असाल की शिवसेना भवनमध्ये राज्यातल्या सर्व महिला जिल्हा प्रमुख आल्या होत्या आणि त्या सुद्धा कशा वाघिणीसारख्या बोलत होत्या, पण त्यांच्या डोळ्यामध्ये अश्रू होते. साधे सुद्धा शिवसैनिक येत आहेत. त्यांच्या रोजीरोटीचा हा प्रश्न आहेच. ज्यांचं तळहातावरती पोट आहे, म्हणजे ज्यांच्याकडे उत्पन्नाचं काही साधनही नाहीये, अशी साधी लोक ही येत आहेत, रडतायत. एका गोष्टीचा नक्कीच अभिमान होता आणि आहे, तो म्हणजे शिवसेनेने आजपर्यंत कोणाची पार्श्वभूमी राजकीय आहे काय आहे याचा विचार न करता साध्या माणसांना
never checked any political background of any person who joined the party and has given big posts to people who came from general background.
ज्यांना या साध्या लोकांच्या मेहनतीने मोठेपण मिळालं, ही लोक मोठी झाली. ती मोठी झालेली माणसं गेली, पण ज्यांनी मोठं केलं ती मोठ्या मनाची आणि मोठ्या हिमतीची साधी माणसं
quit the party, but those who made them big
तोपर्यंत
are still with Shivsena.
काहीही कोणीही धोका पोहोचू शकत नाही. मग मुद्दा काय
No one can cause any harm to the future of Shivsena. Now the question that has risen is that who is the real Shivsena?
कोणी चोरून नेऊ शकेल अशी शिवसेना नाहीये. एक जो
No
फरक
one can steal away Shivsena.
पक्ष आणि मी म्हणेन थोडक्यात
Only
बोली भाषेत
the legislative party
शेवटी रस्त्यावरचा पक्ष हा जनतेच्या न्याय हक्कासाठी रस्त्यावरती उतरत
has
असतो.
gone. But
जनता
the
त्याला
real party which is on the
असते
street
आणि मग त्या पक्षाच्या माध्यमातून हे लोकप्रतिनिधी
works with people
महापालिका,
and
पालिका,
gets
ग्रामपंचायत, जिल्हा
blessings
परिषद,
of people at large.
विधानसभा किंवा असतात. धरून चला
are still with the party.
की कधी काळी आमचा देखील एकच आमदार होता. अगदी वामनराव होते, छगनराव होते, असे एक होते. तेच जर का गेले असते
For
पक्ष
example,
सोडून,
at one point of time,
पण
we
एक
just had
कोणाचा आमदार आहे तो पक्ष सोडून गेला म्हणजे पक्ष
one
संपला का?
MLA.
नाही संपू शकत.
But if that MLA quits, the party doesn't.
50 असो 100 असो, हे सगळेच्या सगळे जरी गेले तरी पक्ष हा अस्तित्वात असतो. आमदार जाऊ शकतात,
Even if
पक्ष
all
जाऊ
the
शकत
MLAs
नाही.
quit,
हा एक लोकांच्या
MLAs can go,
मनामध्ये
but the party
संभ्रम
always
निर्माण
stays.
करण्याचा प्रयत्न केला जातोय. त्या संभ्रमातून तमाम नागरिकांना, जनतेला आणि
There is an
शिवसैनिकांना हेच
attempt
सांगतोय की तुम्ही अजिबात त्यांच्या
create
भ्रमाच्या
confusion among
भोवऱ्यात
people
अडकू नका.
that the party is
विधिमंडळ
over.
पक्ष हा वेगळा
I
असतो
would appeal
आणि
people
रजिस्टर्ड पार्टी ही
not
वेगळी
to
असते. त्याच्यामध्ये असंख्य मतदार आले, नागरिक आले, सदस्य आले,
not to
खूप सगळे
follow
काही
any
वेगवेगळे पदाधिकारी आले.
propaganda that is
आणि
being circulated.
त्या पदाधिकाऱ्यांना हे असेच उचलून कोणी घेऊन जाऊ शकत नाही. सगळ्यांनाच काही पैशाची आमिषे किंवा दमदाट्या करून तुम्ही नेऊन
Not every party worker
आणि म्हणून मी
fall
पुन्हा एकदा
prey
सांगतो
to any false
धनुष्यबाण
promises.
याच्याबद्दल कोणताही संभ्रम कोणीही मनात ठेवू नका. धनुष्यबाण हा शिवसेनेचा आहे आणि शिवसेनेकडेच राहील.
No one should have any doubt that the symbol of Shivsena, that is the bow and arrow, will always remain with the Shivsena.
15-16 आमदार जे माझ्यासोबत राहिले
I would like to praise all the 16 MLAs who have decided to stay with the party.
पाटील नितीन आहेत, बाकीचे तर आहेतच की त्यांना सुद्धा दडपण
All these MLAs,
दाखवण्यात आली.
in spite of all the pressure
हे सगळं टीव्हीवरती आलेलं आहे.
and offers
तरी देखील
and
काय
threats,
वाटेल ते हो,
they still
आम्ही नाही हटणार.
decided to stay with the party.
काय वाटेल ते हो याचाच अर्थ अशा जिगरीची माणसे जिथे असतात तिकडे विजय हा नक्की असतो. याचं कारण अजूनही आपल्या देशामध्ये असत्यमेव जयते हे वाक्य नाहीये, सत्यमेव जयते हेच वाक्य आहे. सत्यमेव जयते. आणि माझा न्यायदेवतेवरती विश्वास आहे, न्याय मंदिरावरती विश्वास आहे. येत्या 12 तारखेला जो काही निकाल लागेल किंवा जी काही सुनावणी सुरू होईल ती सुनावणी हा निकाल केवळ शिवसेनेच्या भवितव्याचा नसणार आहे. शिवसेनेचं काय होईल, शिवसैनिक मजबूत आहेत, शिवसेनेचं काही वाकडं होऊ न देण्याची ताकद ही आज सुद्धा त्यांच्या मनगटामध्ये आहे. मात्र जो काही उद्याची जी काही केस आहे ती देशामध्ये लोकशाहीचं अस्तित्व, लोकशाहीचं भविष्य किती काळ टिकणार आहे, आपली लोकशाही किती मजबूत राहणार आहे. डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांनी तयार केलेली आपली राज्यघटना जी आहे त्या घटनेनुसार या देशातला
given
कारभार
to us
यापुढे
by
होणार आहे
Dr.
की
Baba
नाही
Saheb Ambedkar
हे ठरवणारा आणि
will it be followed
देशाच्याच एकूण पुढच्या
in the
वाटचालीला
near future?
दिशा
Is
दाखवणारा
the
असा
country
निकाल
going to
असणार
follow
आहे.
the path of
माझा
constitution?
तर न्यायदेवतेवरती
Is what
विश्वास
is going to be
आहे.
decided
जे
by
काही
the outcome of the
घटनेप्रमाणे
result
असेल,
in Supreme
जे
Court.
काही न्याय असेल ते तिकडे त्याचा तो निकाल लागेल. पण परत एकदा सांगतो की हा जो काही निकाल किंवा ही जी काही केस आहे हे संपूर्ण देशाचं लक्ष आहे आणि जगाचं लक्ष कदाचित त्याच्यासाठी असेल की आपला देश
Entire country and even the world is
मला वाटतं
watching
पहिल्या 2-3
the result
नंबरचा
in
देश
Supreme
आहे
Court.
ज्याच्यामध्ये सगळ्यात मोठा देश आहे ज्याच्यामध्ये लोकशाही आहे. लोकशाही
We are
आहे
the
तर
biggest
या
democracy
देशात
in the world.
लोकशाहीचं भविष्य किती राहिलेलं आहे शिल्लक, लोकशाहीची ताकद किती शिल्लक राहिलेली आहे आणि
This
लोकशाहीचे
result will determine the future of democracy in the country.
कर्तव्य आहेत ती व्यवस्थित कोणत्याही दडपणाला बळी न पडता पार पाडतायत की नाही हे संपूर्ण जग बघताय. म्हणून मला त्या निकालाची काही चिंता नाहीये. घटनेनुसार जे काय व्हायचं असेल कायद्यानुसार जे काय व्हायचं असेल ते होणार आहे. आता राहिला मुद्दा हाच आहे की आज सुद्धा अनेक जण म्हणजे इतके दिवस जे गप्प होते ते तिकडे जाऊन बोलायला लागलेले आहे आणि मातोश्रीने जर
Some people have started
आणि जर का भाजपशी बोलणी केली
speaking while going on, after they went on the other side. Some said
आवाहन केलं होतं
that
की तुम्ही
they want to come back only if we invite them.
फेस टू फेस तर अधिक बरं
I
झालं
said this
असतं.
earlier that I was willing to talk.
पर्यटन करण्याची काही गरज नव्हती. विशेष म्हणजे
There was no
या
need
लोकांना
to
आज
go around
देखील
places
मातोश्रीबद्दल
all
प्रेम
across
आहे,
the country.
उद्धव ठाकरेंबद्दल
They
प्रेम
still have
आहे,
love for
आदित्यबद्दल
Mataji
प्रेम आहे, त्याच्याबद्दल
and for
मी
me and
त्यांचे
Aditya.
जाहीर आभार मानतो आहे, धन्यवाद देतो आहे की आज देखील
I
तिकडे
thank them for their
गेल्यानंतरही
love.
तुम्हाला आमच्याबद्दल प्रेम वाटते. खरंच धन्य झालो. पण हे प्रेम जे तुम्ही आता दाखवत आहेत तेच प्रेम गेले 2-2.5 वर्ष जी लोक जो पक्ष याच घराण्याला मला माझ्या कुटुंबियांवरती अश्लाघ्य आणि विकृत भाषेमध्ये जी टीका करत होती तेव्हा कोणाचीही दातखिळ उचकटली नव्हती. यांच्यापैकी एक जण सुद्धा त्याला विरोध होईल असं बोलला
Dared to open their mouth when me, my family and the party
विकृत भाषा
were targeted by the people with whom they are now.
करता येतील किंवा ही आम्हाला कुटुंबियांना आजपर्यंत ज्यांनी कोणाची बोलण्याची हिंमत नव्हती अशा अत्यंत विकृत, कारण विकृतपेक्षा आणखीन वाईट शब्द मला तरी काय आठवत नाहीये. विकृतपेक्षा आणखीन काही वाईट शब्द असेल तो मला काय आता आठवत नाहीये. पण ज्यांनी टीका केली त्यांच्या मांडीला मांडी लावून तुम्ही बसता आहात, त्यांच्या गाठी भेटी घेत आहात, त्यांना मिठ्या मारता आहात. मग हे प्रेम तुमचं खरं आहे का टकला तू आहे? कारण ज्यांनी ठाकरे कुटुंबियांचा अपमान केला, ठाकरे
In a derogatory language are the ones with whom they are sitting and are the ones whom they are having.
यांचे प्रयत्न चालले होते. अशा लोकांच्या सोबत तुम्ही
Some of
मांडीला
them
मांडी
even
लावून
went on
बसता
to
आहात.
finish off the
ज्यांनी
career
टीका
of
केली
my son.
त्यांच्याकडनं स्वागत स्वीकारत आहात. तर हे प्रेम खरं
And
का
now
खोटं
they are
हे सुद्धा
accepting
जनतेला आता कळू द्या.
welcome
हे
speeches
सुद्धा कळू द्या.
and
बाकी अनेक प्रश्न
red
आहेत त्या
carpet
प्रश्नांची
from
आता
them.
मी काही उत्तरं तूर्त देणार
And now you are
नाहीये,
trying to
कारण
show
ही उत्तरं
love for me.
जनतेच्या मनामध्ये आहेत. जनता
There are still
मी मागे
questions in
सुद्धा
the mind
म्हटलं
of
होतं
people
की
of
हा
Maharashtra.
शिवरायाचा महाराष्ट्र आहे, हा डोळे नसलेला
This is Shivaji Maharaj's Maharashtra and hasn't closed its eyes.
पुढे काय होणार अनेक प्रश्न आहेत. पण एकाच प्रश्नाचं उत्तर हे जनता अपेक्षा त्यांच्याकडनं करते ते त्यांनी खरं द्यावं की एवढं सगळं देऊन साधी साधी माणसं यांना साध्या माणसाने शिवसेनेने
And in spite of getting so much, simple people who came from the street were given big posts. People will ask them, why did you take that step? And I don't think they'll have any answer to that.
त्याच्याबद्दल येत्या काही दिवसामध्ये मी माझ्या नेत्यांशी आणि माझ्या खासदारांशी चर्चा करून जो काही निर्णय घ्यायचा तो घेईन. पण परत एकदा
In days to come, I will be holding meetings with my party leaders and MPs
मनापासून धन्यवाद
and
द्यायचे
speak to you
आहेत.
again.
कारण
But I want to thank people of Maharashtra
फोन करतायत, मेसेज
and people
पाठवतायत, मेसेज
who are coming to meet me and calling me. Some of them who don't even know me and coming and meeting me.
घडलं हे मान्य नाहीये आणि म्हणून
They
मी
feel
पुन्हा एकदा सांगतो की हे
that
असे खेळ
whatever has happened is wrong.
परत एकदा विधानसभेची निवडणूक घ्या. जर आम्ही चुकलो असू तर लोक परत सांगतो हे मी मागे बोललोय. जर आम्ही चुकलो असू
I challenge to hold
जेव्हा घात केला म्हणून
assembly elections now.
जन्म दिला. आज जे
If
काही
they are
त्यांनी
true,
केलेलं आहे हे 2.5 वर्षापूर्वी जर केलं असतं
People
तर ते
will show.
सन्मानाने झालं असतं. आणि जे काही खर्चाचे आकडे येत आहेत 1000 कोटी 2000 कोटी मला नाही माहित 3000 कोटी हे फुकटाच झालं असतं. हे फुकटाच झालं असतं.
Had they kept their word, the experiment of Mahavikas Aghadi would have never been done. This thing that they have done today could have been done with great respect in 2019 itself, they wouldn't have had to indulge into conspiracies to do this. I feel that assembly elections should be held now. If we are wrong, people will make us sit at home and they will show us our place. But if they are wrong, people will show them their place.
मी प्रश्नोत्तर करण्यापेक्षा थोडंसं माझं मनातल्या ज्या काही गोष्टी आहेत त्या बोलत जाईल, कारण मला कुठेही वादविवाद होऊ द्यायचा नाहीये. माझ्याकडनं मी शांतपणाने चाललेलो आहे.
I don't want any confrontation.
मी आवाहन केलेलं आहे.
They said that Uddhav Thackeray should invite us with respect, but I've appealed that. I made that appeal already.
अत्यंत वाईट पद्धतीने आमच्याशी वागले. त्यांच्याबरोबर त्यांना मिठ्या मारताना जर का तुम्हाला आनंद मिळत असेल तर तुमचा आनंद तुम्हाला लख लाभो. मला माझ्या साध्या शिवसैनिकाचा जो एक विश्वास आहे आणि त्यांच्या डोळ्यातले जे अश्रू आहेत त्या अश्रूचे मोल हे मला जास्त आहेत. परत एकदा नम्रपणाने सगळ्यांना धन्यवाद देतो. जय हिंद, जय महाराष्ट्र.
So that is the press conference by Uddhav Thackeray for the first time after, in fact, resigning as Chief Minister of Maharashtra. He is now taking on Eknath Shinde at a time when Uddhav Thackeray is essentially backed up against the wall, considering he's been losing a lot of support. And these aren't just MLAs, but also corporators who have dumped Uddhav Thackeray and chosen to side with Eknath Shinde, with the current Maharashtra Chief Minister. Uddhav Thackeray, however, maintains that he remains the real Shiv Sena and that nobody can take away the legacy of Balasaheb Thackeray from him. He's also maintaining that the party symbol, the infamous bow and arrow symbol of the Shiv Sena, remains with him and his side. So Uddhav clearly declaring that he will continue now to fight. And a big breaking news that's coming in, tragic news coming in this afternoon from Japan. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has passed away. He's been confirmed dead by authorities after being shot at twice in that attack during a rally that happened this morning. Now, after hours of him being in a critical condition, it's been confirmed that he has passed away. He is dead, dying after 2 bullet shots were fired at him. 2 bullets were fired at him at his chest from behind by the shooter, who is in custody. The news coming in right now from Japanese media that we've been tracking is that Shinzo Abe is no more. He's passed away and has been confirmed dead. We're expecting a statement and some sort of communication from the Japanese government. The last time Japanese Prime Minister Kishida spoke, he had said that Shinzo Abe is in an extremely critical condition and that the doctors were doing everything they could to save him and to ensure that he survived this horrific attack. But now the tragic news that's come in is that Shinzo Abe is no more. He's been shot dead. So an assassination of the former Prime Minister of Japan. This has been condemned. Condolences no doubt will pour in from across the world, particularly from India. Shinzo Abe was seen as someone who is a dear, dear friend to all of us here in India. And he was someone who transformed Indo-Japan ties. But the news that's just coming in, Japanese media confirming now that Shinzo Abe is no more. After fighting for his life for hours, he was in a critical condition. He was non-responsive soon after that attack on him. He was fired at twice using a shotgun by the assassin. And now the news that's trickled in from the hospital where he was admitted soon after is that he's passed away. There was, in fact, an attempt to revive him almost immediately after he collapsed after 2 shots were fired at him this morning. There were attempts to revive him using CPR. He was non-responsive. He'd reportedly stopped breathing then and had suffered a cardiac arrest, but was rushed out, airlifted out to a nearby medical hospital to the Nara Medical University, but unfortunately hasn't survived this attack. Let's take this across to Christian, who's been reporting. Christian Grimaldi is live for us from that attack site. Tragic news, Christian. Japanese authorities have confirmed that Shinzo Abe hasn't survived that assassination attempt. He's been confirmed dead.
I also got confirmation from the news. It's atrocious. I mean, I've been talking to people here that have been supporting of Abe. They rushed here when they heard the news. They even left their jobs, and it's really unbelievably outstanding and terrific. And these people here that they were telling me the same thing that I was commenting through the whole time today. The fact that this guy had the profile that he had, that he was somebody who was not working. He had all the time to prepare this attack, to self-made a weapon. This is something that for Japanese is just completely like a sign of some sort of, you could say a sociopath. He was, in a sense, a sociopath because he had no job. He was socially alienated. This news comes, we are still on the spot, and there's still people coming, and I'm sure there will be more coming. And
Really, truly tragic. Christian is reporting there from that spot. Yes, Christian.
Yeah, no. From what I see, even the Japanese, they're gonna take this moment to mourn already. I was talking to people at work when this happened. They were like, nobody talked to each other about this. They wanted to forget even the news just by diving into their job, into their work. And this is something that even to talk about, it's really, really hard for them. Even some students, when they got the news, the students that I talked to, they of course, they were shocked, but they didn't comment on it. This is not something that the Japanese go on speculating why they happened. Who was this guy? Who was this perpetrator? This is something that the television news will work on it, and then people will watch it, but they will never do that on their private lives. This is something they just take in their heart, and they bear the pain, and they suffer in silence. It's really what the Japanese spirit is. And even now, there's a really it's very quiet for being very close to a station. This place now. And for having hundreds of journalists anyway, it's really quiet. It's really quiet, and there's very even few normal people that come to just take a picture. For as a sign of respect for Abe Prime Minister, and
Christian, it must be heartbreaking for every Japanese national, for the world really. That a former prime minister had to go this way, someone with such a rich political career who's given so much to Japan and has passed away in this kind of a very public, dramatic shooting that's happened where you're standing. You're telling us that people are coming there, taking pictures. I'm sure right now they must be offering their condolences in any way they can. Whatever political differences, whatever political opinion, and if people agreed with him or not, this is a moment in Japan's history that will be remembered for many, many years to come. Christian, if you could show us around, if you could speak to some people as well. We'd like to know how Japanese nationals are really looking at this story, because it's shocking really to see how a former prime minister was shot at exactly where you are, in a very public space on the road.
Yes, yes, it's incredible. I spoke at least to people who haven't witnessed themselves the tragic events, but because they take this road every single day, they interrupted their job just on purpose to come here and see it and see where it happened. And they were incredibly shocked by the fact that this is the little road that they take every day to go to the station. As you can see that's the station right there. This is the road. This is a sidewalk that you take to go to the station. And many people do this. Many people do this journey, as the trains are one of the most used means of transportation in Japan, far more than the car. And so a station is it's really the heart of the movement of the workers in Japan. And they all go through here. They all go through this little 10 meters of sidewalk.
Yeah, for every Japanese national right now who's dealing with all the shock, we're as heartbroken as every Japanese national out there, because for us here in India also, Shinzo Abe shared such a close cord with the Indians, with India, had such a close cultural tie also with us, and of course with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So condolences pouring in from across the world. I'm sure there's a sense of shock that's gripped Japan over what's happened. You see, Christian, they're showing you that particular road. Look at the kind of activity around there. And it's in that road that Shinzo Abe, a former Prime Minister of Japan, was shot at twice from behind by the shooter. And of course, we all have so many questions of why this happened, how it could have happened, etc. But right now, of course, it's still sinking in that Shinzo Abe is no more. It's been confirmed that unfortunately he's passed away after fighting for his life for the last many hours. He was in a critical condition. He was shot twice from behind, straight in the chest with a shotgun. So it was near impossible for him to survive such a horrific attack, such a dastardly attack that happened there in full public view during a rally. Mid-sentence, he was stopped short as he was shot from behind. And meters away from him was the gunman, the assassin, with that shotgun that you see there on your screens as well, which he'd wrapped around in black tape to make it look like a camera. You know, from you, Christian, from what you're showing us, I can see how busy that area is, which is why we're all so shocked at how it happened. The manner at which this assassination happened in full public view. The shooter walked around there very at ease, casually, with his sling bag in place, and then suddenly shot at the former Prime Minister.
Yeah, and we can add some piece of information to the whole thing.
Sure.
Speaking with some of the locals, people who actually live here. So when some speech like this from a politician happens, they're usually getting formed by what's called chirashi, by hand leaves. There is some publicity, but was not the case. So this was some sort of improvisation. People didn't know that this was going to happen, that there was a speech. And that is why, and we speculated this before, why only 30 people? And that is why, because it was improvised, because it was not planned. And apparently the only people who could know about this were the people from the Abe's party, and probably only the people from the local party. So he came this morning from Shinagawa, from Tokyo, and he arrived here on the way to Kyoto. And so this was the extemporary stop, was something that it was not on a schedule. So how did this gunman knew about this? This is something that the investigation will have to, I'm sure they are already
We'll await those
looking into
answers. I'm going to come back to you, Christian, in just a bit. Dr. Nancy Snow, analyst, is joining us live from New York. We also have Jun Isomura, advisor to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Gaurav Samant is also with me here in the studio. Gaurav, I'll just take across a few questions and then I'll have you in as well. I'd like to bring in Jun Isomura first on this broadcast. Our condolences, our sincere condolences to you. For every Indian also, we've also felt a very close connect with Shinzo Abe. He's had that impact because diplomatically he's done so much and had that cultural relationship also with Japan. But before, we talk about all of that, I want to understand how, you're reacting to the news that's come in right now of Shinzo Abe's passing. I'm sure this is a huge loss to you personally as well. Mr. Isomura? All right, we'll just connect with Mr. Isomura in just a bit. Let me bring in Dr. Nancy Snow right now. Dr. Snow, you've covered, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for many, many years, the longest serving Prime Minister of Japan. And his legacy as, a political leader, someone who led Japan through some of its hardest economic times, is something that the country, the world really will remember.
Yes, and I actually had a chance to meet him on a few occasions. One at the global conference, the world, they called it WA, and it was to celebrate womenomics. And he and Mrs. Abe actually came around to all of the breakout rooms and greeted us individually. And then another time I met him as an Abe Fellow at the 25th anniversary in Tokyo, and he was there with his mother. And those were the two times that I'll hold in memory. But yes, I've written extensively because he is that important to Japan as a figure, as a part of a political dynasty going back decades in Japan's post-war history. It's quite incredible that we've lost him at a relatively young age, even though he had health problems. But to be taken out like this, in this fashion, it's so unsettling. It's so traumatic. Of course, I give my condolences to his family, but also to the entire nation, because this is going to really hurt for a long time. And it may very well change Japan forever. That sense of security, that comfort level that we had with not having the gun violence. Now you have somebody who fashioned his own gun and used it like a bomb to kill the former prime minister. It's still just so hard to come to terms with. Again, I'm grieving now.
I can imagine, Dr. Snow. I know we all have a lot of questions, particularly why. Why was Shinzo Abe targeted like this? And that's something perhaps in the days to come, hopefully we'll get answers to. Mr. Jun Isomura is with us.
Yes.
Mr. Isomura, I hope you can hear me. We can offer our condolences only, sir, at this point to you and to the entire nation, to Japan, which I'm sure is grieving right now the loss of one of, I'd say, the biggest political figures that Japan has seen, sir.
How can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah, actually, Abe passed away just now.
Yeah, we just got the news, sir. We just got the news. Our condolences to you, Mr. Isomura.
Yeah, and actually, Shinzo Abe was very close to Prime Minister Modi, and they have a very trusted relationship. And also, I'm shocked that his father, Shintaro Abe, passed away at the age 67. And Shinzo Abe also 67 this year. So it's funny, very, very, very sad issue. And
the ironies of life. Mr. Isomura, I'm sure you've corresponded so much with Mr. Abe. One topic that you touched about is, of course, the relationship between Prime Minister Modi and Shinzo Abe. And I think he had that connect also largely with every Indian. Not many world leaders manage that kind of a connect with us. And we can tell you that right now, the entire country, India, stands with Japan in this hour of grief. But, sir, if you could talk about what really made Shinzo Abe stand out as a prime minister, as the longest serving prime minister of Japan, as a politician, and someone who changed, Japan's politics on its head.
Actually, of course, Shinzo had his very, very deep, trusted connection with all over the world, including President Vladimir Putin of Russia, and it is a very big loss for Japan to for Japan's foreign politics. And actually, of course, he was former prime minister, so his influence to politics, his influence was very limited to Japanese politics. But so many people trusted him, and so many people expected his he worked more, take more important role. Thank you.
Mr. Isomura, just stay on with me. I'd also like to bring in Gaurav Sawant on this broadcast. He'd like to ask a few questions to you as well. Gaurav?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you look at Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's contribution to Japan, what would you recall the most at this point of time? Abenomics was something that he stood for, making Japan militarily stronger, economically stronger, standing up to China. What would his single largest contribution be?
Actually, the Japanese foreign policy not rely on Shinzo Abe, but he was, of course, one of leader Japanese foreign politics, and he was a good advisor to Prime Minister Kishida today, and but the relationship, the area of Northeast Asia is very complicated area because of the three military powers and the three economic powers. Military powers means China, Russia, and the United States, and economic power means the U.S., China, and Japan. So very complicated area, and we needed Shinzo Abe for in this situation. He has to take he had to take a more important role.
Mr. Isomura, there'll be many highs from Shinzo Abe's political career that all of us will discuss about. But something that you touched upon initially that I'd like to bring the focus back on is Indo-Japan ties. And many were of the opinion that it transformed under Shinzo Abe's leadership. What was it about him that, and what was it? You're a former advisor to Shinzo Abe. Did you ever get a sense of why he believed that there was a need to, kind of dig deeper when it comes to Indo-Japan ties?
Actually, India-Japan relation is very important, and because of the Indo-Pacific strategy, and also they called Quad, Indo-Japan, US, and Australia, Quad. Of course, India's position is very sensitive because of your relationship with Russia is very deep, but India has a long history, has the longest history in the world actually, and actually, it's very important country, and because of the between India and Japan, there are ASEAN countries, 10 ASEAN countries, and we have to consider how to support them, and so Japan and India should be a very good partner for.
Mr. Isomura, my apologies, sir, for interrupting you there.
Okay.
We're just cutting across live now to a briefing by some of the doctors who treated Shinzo Abe.
Medical University Hospital. Originally, the plan was that the news conference will begin at 6 p.m. It's already 10 past 6. And in this room, there is the head of the hospital and professor in charge of emergency medicine. And reporters are here waiting for the news conference to begin.
It
seems that we still have some more time. About the suspect, I think you have a number of pieces of information in regards to the suspect. He is a former member of the Maritime Self-Defense Force. He was at the Defense Force around 2005. Well, up until 2005, he was a member of the Maritime Self-Defense Force. Yes. I think the news conference will start shortly. On the left is the head of the hospital, and the right is the professor for emergency medicine. And this is the hospital where former Prime Minister Abe was brought to after he was shot at the Yamato Saidaiji station in Nara. His condition when brought here and the treatment that was given to him will probably be announced by the physicians. And once the preparation is complete, the news conference is to begin. Mr. Yabuchi, Mr. Abe, when he was shot. According to the first responders, what was his condition like? Well, at the point in time when he was brought to this hospital, it said that he was conscious. But then, according to the fire department, it believed that he was shot in the right neck, and due to bleeding, he lost consciousness after arriving at the hospital. We will hear the treatment that was given to Mr. Abe. And we have information now about the suspect. According to multiple number of SDF members, from 2002 to 2005, for 3 years, Yamagami Tetsuya, the suspect, is said to have worked for Kure base of the Maritime Self-Defense Force. From 2002 to 2005, it is said that he belonged to the Kure force at Hiroshima of the Self-Defense Force.
We would like to begin the press conference from the Nara Medical University Hospital. Serving as a moderator, Ichikawa Kimihiko, the director, and Fukushima Hidetada, responsible for emergency treatment. These two doctors will conduct the press conference. First of all, we'd like to turn to Dr. Fukushima. Dr. Fukushima now speaks on the condition of former Prime Minister Abe. He has been transferred to hospital 12:20. On arrival, he has had no vital signs, and we conduct resuscitation measures. However, unfortunately, 5 p.m., he has passed away. And there have been gun wounds in 2 locations in the neck, and there have also been subcutaneous hemorrhage that has been observed. And we have conducted blood transfusion. However, unfortunately, we have not been able to sustain his life. And that will conclude the explanation. We would like to receive questions from the media. A microphone will be delivered from Mainichi Shimbun. Can you please once again explain the exact timing by which he has been determined to have passed away? It was 5 p.m. that he passed away. And there is another gentleman. The gun wounds, how serious were the gun wounds and in what area? And please indicate the name of the press. From Yomiuri Shimbun. I would like to inquire about the wounds. And what area, which side of the neck? At the center and somewhat to the right. These are where the gun wounds were found. And the lesions were very small. Any other questions? We will deliver the microphone. Please kindly wait.
奈良県立医科大学の会見の模様をお伝えしています。
We have been covering a press conference for Nara Medical University. We understand that he has been subjected to a gunshot. How deep were the wounds?
深さというのはその心臓にまで到達する深さというふうに理解いただいたらと思います。
Please understand that the gun has penetrated the heart.
すいません、NHK
NHK?
の安土と申します。
Azuchi,
治療に当たられたということなんです
you have spent 4.5 hours on treatment. When he was carried into the hospital, was the condition extremely serious? Yes. At the point of transport to the hospital, there were no vital signs. And the doctor has also transported him, and during that time, there were no vital signs as well. What were the chances of survival at that point in time? It was extremely serious, and grave conditions. It was very grave. Thank you very much.
Well, I think he was shot from a close distance. But looking at the wound, do you think that there was a strong intention to kill him? Well, I've just seen the wound, so I cannot make any judgment. Sorry. Anything else? Honda from ABC Television. The 4.5 hours while you were giving him treatment, what kind of treatment was being given? Basically, we tried to stop the bleeding and also conduct blood transfusion. Anything else? Person over there? Horie from Yamazaki Broadcasting. You say that you conducted a massive blood transfusion. But what is the volume of blood? A large amount, that is all. So it's more than 100 units. I cannot give you the amount in milliliters. Asahi Shimbun? About the family. Have you already given an explanation to the family members? Yes, we did. Thank you. Please use the microphone up front. Chunichi Shimbun. You said that you explained to the family. How did they react? Can you explain about what it was like, his wife especially? Well, I just communicated the health condition and the treatment that was given. That is all. I cannot give you any other details. Anything else? Asahi Shimbun? Were the bullets inside his body during the operation, surgery? We could not confirm the bullet. I think that we might find out later, but during the surgery we were not able to find the bullet or bullets. Then the person up front. NHK Fujita. There were 2 shots. We hear. Of the 2, which do you think was the critical one that took his life? I cannot judge. I only know that there were 2 wounds believed to be bullet wounds. And because the wound reached the heart was damaged, causing bleeding. That is all I can say. Anything else?
We understand that there were 2 gun wounds. Were they in the neck or were they at the chest? They were at the neck. There were 2 gun wounds found in the neck. That is right. However, you have indicated that they reached the heart. Yes, in terms of direction from the neck, it had reached the heart. Any other questions? Mainichi Hoso Nojima. For confirmation's sake, there were 2 wounds in the neck. However, in the chest, in the artery, there were wounds in the chest and also heart. Is that correct? Yes. When you say neck, exactly where would it be? Right here. It's the base of the neck, 2 locations. And when you say the heart, where would that be? There is a vessel, the blood vein rather, that connects from the neck. And we understand that surgical treatment was conducted. What kind of surgical treatment was conducted? If you could kindly explain in layman's terms. Basically, we need to identify where the hemorrhage was conducted, and therefore we need to conduct an open surgery, and therefore this is a surgical treatment. To identify where the hemorrhage is being conducted and a treatment in order to stop the hemorrhage. Any other questions? NHK? The factor leading to death is attributed to bleeding. Is that correct? Yes, it can be expressed as death from bleeding. And you have mentioned that the bullet reached the heart. And were there any damages to the organ? The damage to the heart was serious. And we say wound or damage. How would you explain this? There is a wide gaping hole in the heart. This is attributed to the gun wound. Compared to other wounds, is there something that is particularly pronounced? There has not been a comparison that has been conducted, but gun wounds, for the most part, create a larger wound. Any other questions? From Chunichi Shimbun, Okaya. He has penetrated the internal organs of the heart, but there were 2 wounds in the neck. But you have also mentioned you were not able to detect the bullet. And how about on the backside of the heart? Were there any wounds that were detected? There were wounds in the shoulder area. And we believe that, therefore, the bullet has penetrated to that extent. So it has penetrated in one location. And as for the other wound, you were not able to detect a wound that has been caused by penetration of the bullet. And you have not been able to identify or detect the bullets. That is correct. Any other questions? Oshimoto is my name. After the family members arrived, I believe it was about after 5 p.m. that they had arrived. But when they arrived, the former Prime Minister had already passed away. Is that correct? Since the transferal to the hospital, no vital signs had been detected. Any other questions? Go ahead. My name is Ota. You explained about the wound, the two wounds. Were they in close proximity? Where were they located specifically? Basically, there were two in the proximity, about 5 centimeters apart. Thank you. Any other questions? Yomiuri TV? Any related question? After his wife, Akie, arrived, I would like to inquire as to the condition of former Prime Minister Abe. As I have indicated, the same explanation has been offered to Madam Akie regarding the cardiopulmonary arrest. That is correct.
Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper. About the treatment, you said that you conducted blood transfusion. Was it that you failed to stop the bleeding and he died? Well, there were some areas in which we were able to stop the hemorrhage, but because of the large volume of hemorrhage, and it was difficult to carry out or realize coagulation of the blood, and because of the large amount of hemorrhage, it was not possible for us to totally stop the bleeding. But we were able to manage to stop the bleeding in the large blood vessels, but unfortunately he died. Anything else? Mainichi Hoso. I believe that the first responders conducted AED, automated external defibrillator. Do you think that was proper? Well, I don't know what happened before he arrived at this hospital, so I cannot say anything for sure. Thank you. Another? If he was shot in the heart, in order to resuscitate, is it proper to use AED? Yes, I believe so. Anything else? Person in the middle? Matsuda? It's according to the news, he was in the ICU, intensive care unit. So what treatment was given to him? No, he was not taken to the ICU. Anything else? Over there? At the site of the shooting, do you think that he was lost vital signs? Well, all I can say that is that he fell into a cardiopulmonary arrest state at the scene of the crime. So can we say that he was gravely injured, died at the scene of the crime? Well, it might be that people will interpret that way, but we...
So that's the live briefing by the doctors who treated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at the Nara Medical University. And they've confirmed that he died due to 2 bullet shot wounds, one in his neck, low to his neck, the other closer to his heart in the chest. Excessive bleeding, which they couldn't control. He was already unconscious when he was brought into the hospital and was declared dead at 5:03 p.m. Japan time. Let me take this across to Tim Hornick, who's joining us live from Tokyo. He's a journalist based currently in Tokyo. Tim, the news, of course, is still sinking in. A lot of questions that people still have. I'm sure it's heartbreaking for the citizens of Japan right now that Shinzo Abe is no more, wherever you stand in the political spectrum. You know, the question that everyone will be asking right now is why? Why did this happen?
Yes, indeed. That's what everyone wants to know after the shock of the events today and the passing of former Prime Minister Abe settles in. What we know so far is pretty sketchy. The suspect seems to be making nonsensical statements that seem to contradict each other. At one point, he apparently said that he had a beef or some kind of dissatisfaction with the former Prime Minister. Later, apparently, he said that it wasn't a political issue and that he was trying to aim for the leader or an executive of a religious group who was not even at the scene. So one wonders about this man's mental state right now, and I think Japanese investigators are working hard to understand that.
Yeah, and you know, as you pointed out, there are some statements that have been emerging of what he's told the police so far. But here's a man, 41-year-old local, Tim. He belonged to the Nara city, stepped out, saw this rally happening, but it wasn't a spur of the moment decision. He was equipped. He had this handgun with him, this shotgun with him. Reportedly, at least from the information we gather right now, it was handmade as well. So this was a local who targeted him. Why? We don't know. But there is, of course, a lot of speculation on that. There's no doubt at this point, Tim, that we all have a lot of questions on the circumstances that led to Shinzo Abe's shooting and his subsequent death, unfortunately, as well. But this is an assassination that no doubt will rock Japan for years to come, because Japan has seen nothing quite like this.
That's right. There have been political incidents of political violence in Japan in the past. The mayor of Nagasaki was gunned down in 2007. Another political leader was stabbed to death in 1960. But generally speaking, in the post-war period, political violence has been rare. In the pre-war period, in the 1920s and 30s, it was a lot more common to have prime ministers attacked, even assassinated. If you go to Tokyo Station today, you can see two markers on the floor where such events happened. So post-war Japanese, modern Japanese are still trying to figure out how this could happen. And I'm sure the security situation and the security arrangements for politicians are being reviewed everywhere.
Very true, and particularly in Japan, because if you look at this particular incident, and there have been questions, Tim, that have been raised since this came to light, and all of the multiple videos that have been doing the rounds about the security detail for Mr. Abe, someone who's served as the Prime Minister of the country. But do you think there was really something of particular concern that requires an inquiry, or was it just that that's how Japan is as a culture, was considered to be very safe, and, you know, security detail for politicians was always at a minimum?
Well, that's right. As you know, the gun laws here in Japan are very strict. To obtain a gun, you have to go through a long process that is difficult, and not too many people want to try to obtain guns here in Japan. And so maybe for that reason, the security arrangements around politicians and some figures is rather light. On the one hand, that makes them approachable. When they're around stumping and giving election speeches, you can approach them and talk with them, maybe shake their hand, that sort of thing. But so when something like this happens just out of the blue, when someone uses what seems to be a homemade firearm to carry out a killing like this, it's stunning.
Truly, you know, we're still processing a lot of the information that's coming in right now with regards to the person who did it, the shooter, the assassin here, and why he did it. And if I bring that back to focus, Tim, and particularly, you know, some of the political decisions that were taken by Shinzo Abe, he was considered to be popular. Yes, there were some moments in his political career when some of his decisions were deemed to be controversial or perhaps unpopular, but nothing that anyone would have declared could lead to this.
That's right. It's pure speculation, of course, but former Prime Minister Abe always seemed to be a champion of Japan's military. He was pushing to have Japan's post-war constitution revised, to have the self-defense forces officially recognized in the constitution. So just speculating that this suspect was part of what is Japan's navy more than 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's odd to imagine that he had some kind of beef related to those things. Maybe he had a complaint due to something else. And Prime Minister Abe, of course, saw his share of controversy. For example, in the COVID pandemic, he was criticized for his measures to try to contain the infections. So it's really hard to imagine what this person had in mind when he decided to shoot former Prime Minister Abe.
You know, when you look at the kind of details that are emerging, and when it first broke, the news of Shinzo Abe being shot at him, there was speculation that perhaps this was an outsider who did it. So it did come with a great amount of shock that this was a local. This was someone who lived in Nara city, a 41-year-old who decided to shoot at Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. What do you think this will really mean for Japan going forward?
Well, going forward, we have an upper house election in a few days. And I expect that the Liberal Democratic Party will perhaps gain some support at the polls from this incident. Japan will probably take a good look at the safety of society here. We've had other incidents in which random people have been attacked by people with mental issues. And that's we've seen some reaction to that with, for example, staff at railway companies trying to train in order to better deal with these kinds of incidents. So in Japan, sometimes it seems like we live in a sort of safety bubble with very few firearms, and incidents like this can really burst your bubble in a way to when you realize that violence is just around the corner.
Very true. And, this is happening in a country, as Tim pointed out, that's got extremely strict gun control laws. And yet you have a man, a 41-year-old, who, it seems at least, going by the preliminary information we have, made this weapon at home and then went ahead and shot the former Prime Minister in broad daylight in full public view when he was speaking, literally mid-sentence, shot at him twice and tragically has killed him. Tim, I request you to stay on with me. I'd like to also bring in Christian Martini Grimaldi, who's been reporting for us for the last many hours from the Nara city, from where this attack had happened and from where Shinzo Abe was assassinated. Christian, just show us what's happening around you. I'm sure there are many locals who've now gathered there, to pay their tribute, to pay their condolences to Shinzo Abe. Apologies. We'll just reconnect with Christian there. He's having a bit of a problem with his audio connection. So we will fix that and get Christian to get us that live report. You can see around him, he's showing us with his camera the number of people who've gathered. There's, of course, for obvious reasons, a lot of security that's also deployed at that particular spot. But this incident has shocked the entire world. And let me bring in Tim back on this broadcast. Tim, you talk about the legacy of Shinzo Abe. For us here in India, of course, it's going to be somewhat personal, this loss, because we've always felt that among many of the world leaders, Shinzo Abe had this direct, rather personal connect with India and with Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well, which is what's prompted Prime Minister Modi to also announce a one-day national mourning here in the country for the passing of Shinzo Abe. But you speak about the legacy of Mr. Abe and what he's left behind, really, what people will talk about during his tenure as Prime Minister in Japan.
Well, certainly Abe was one of the most significant prime ministers in the post-war period. He's the longest-serving prime minister in Japanese history, with an 8-year term, his second term. He did that despite battling health issues, which forced him to step down, both from his first in 2006-07 and his second term, 2020. He was a nationalist who tried to reassert Japan's role on the world stage, economically and otherwise. He is probably going to be remembered for many things, but one of them will be Abenomics, the economic policies that he advocated, including fiscal policies, opening up the country to more and more tourism, and liberalizing the economy and promoting innovation to try to stimulate the economy. As you know, the population here in Japan is in decline. That means that the working force is shrinking, and it's harder and harder for the country to compete when there's not much immigration in Japan. So Abe tried to turn that around with his Abenomics policies and had some success doing that.
True, and you know there'll be many who'll be talking about the legacy that Shinzo Abe has left behind. We saw, of course, Prime Minister Kishida earlier when he was also speaking and interacting to the media. This was back when he had confirmed that Shinzo Abe was in a critical condition. He did get rather emotional, Tim, and of course for the entire party, for the LDP, this is going to be a moment they'll never forget. Perhaps a turning point for them as well as a party.
That's right. I think that the LDP will continue their very dominant position in Japanese politics. They have been the dominant party for the post-war period. They've only been out of power here briefly and struck alliances with other groups to maintain their dominant position. So I think that will be that's not in jeopardy at all here. What will come will be a re-examination of how politicians interact with the public. What caused this? Again, that's all speculation right now. But certainly the way the politicians meet and greet the public and go out and carry out their electioneering is something that will be re-examined for sure.
That's very, very true. And here in India, you know, the first thing that happened when we started broadcasting this news is so many questions about how a former Prime Minister could be mingling so easily with the crowd, because it's unheard of here in India. But that perhaps is what Japan's culture was all about, which could just change now with this particular incident. Tim, stay on with me. I'm going to attempt again to connect with Christian Martini Grimaldi, who's joining us live from Nara city, from the spot where Shinzo Abe was assassinated. Christian, I hope you can hear me. If you could show us around what's happening, because, you know, the last we connected with you, you showed us how locals were starting to gather in large numbers there after the news of Abe's demise broke.
Yes. We're actually here now. There have been coming up some testimony of the shooting, and we can actually see him, a guy who's as I told you, many of the people, like they really liked Abe, and they were participating in some of his other speeches. And as a matter of fact, there's a whole young guys who have been doing this, which again is quite unusual for Japanese, young Japanese to be following a politician. But Abe was a sort of a character who could actually have a following from young people. And as a matter of fact, like, no matter what political affiliation you had, Abe was a political figure that made Japan feel strong. That's the bottom line, and we knew that. People knew that, and after Abe was gone, they realized the big loss with the very, very weak government that they've been having since then. And at this point, you know. There's going to be a long morning, and now that people come already and put flowers, I can show you right here. They already put flowers, and as I was about to say, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Japanese start putting here drinks and other stuff, which is usual when situations like this happen. Like usually a suicide happen, that people come and right away put some flowers. So you got people here coming and praying already for Shinzo Abe. And so this is a really, really sad moment for Japanese. And you have somebody from the political party already made in a statement. But you know, this is really interesting to see what the regular people, regular folks come and do here. See this other salary man, he just stopped here and give a pray. He just stopped and give a pray. I mean, these are people usually they're not had no interest in politics. And these are people who have really no whatsoever. They don't talk about politics, but you know, something like this tragic happens, and they all stand united, and they in silence, they mourn, you know, and they think about what happened. You have a lonely high school girl here next to the site, and she's also like messaging somebody. So yeah, this is a situation at the moment here. You can see it.
Christian is reporting for us from the site where the attack took place, where the assassination happened. You see locals gathering there, very spontaneously offering their prayers, offering their condolences. And in a small tribute also for the former Prime Minister, you can see wreaths, flowers are all laid on the road. This is where the attack happened. Christian, if possible, I know that there are a lot of people who've gathered there. If you could speak to some of the people, because we'd also like to know what former Prime Minister Abe meant to them. I'm sure they're all shocked by what's happened in the last few hours.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, Abe is the Prime Minister dressed up like Mario Bros, to announce the now, gone Olympics, which, were cursed by the COVID, as we know. But when that happened, it was 4 years, 5 years before that, because 1 year was extended to the Olympics. I think it was in Brazil, you had announced that. People found it really, really entertaining, really funny to see their president, their prime minister dressed up in a cartoon character, basically. And that's something that usually politicians wouldn't do. You wouldn't even expect from Abe doing something like that, but he did it, and that stays with the people. That represents their country. They're very proud of their country. And Abe, more than any other presidents, for sure, the reason here is he had that persona, he had that personality. He would be there on those meetings. In the G7 or G20 meetings, that you would see he had you would recognize him right away. He was a symbol. He was a symbol of the nation, and no matter how bad press he had, bad liberal press he definitely had, but he was definitely a unifier. He was a unifier whatsoever in his effort to get back the northern territories from Russia that he worked on for years and years and years, and now those talks are off, and they're never going to see back their northern territories anymore. And but even for other efforts, even concerning trying to put women in the workforce, like somebody mentioned previously, even though he didn't work very well for the average salary, because they have average salary. They got twice the people on the workforce, and then the average salary gets half. It's a mere economics, and so but Abe at least tried to make an effort, and he wasn't really what would you say, sold off in terms of what's coming big from the West in terms of liberal influences, like you see now,
You brought up an important point also, Christian. Just stay on with me. We're going to keep coming across to you for your reports. I want to bring in Tim Hornick also on this. And Tim, a lot has been spoken about what Shinzo Abe stood for. One of the aspects, or which, of course, something that irked China rather, was that Shinzo Abe was very clear as far as his stand on Taiwan was concerned.
Yes, that's right. I think Abe tried to be a pragmatist when it came to the China-Taiwan problem, trying to balance the what is seen as an expansionist policy by the government of China with the needs of the defense needs of Taiwan and the alliance with the United States. So he had a very delicate balancing act to manage, while trying to handle the other foreign policy initiatives, as we just talked about with the Northern Territories and Russia, a dispute that goes all the way back to World War II, when Japan and the Soviet Union were not able to conclude a formal peace treaty after that conflict. So certainly Shinzo Abe tried to push forward his agenda, nationalist one on the foreign policy side, and I think he had mixed success, and he was more successful, I would say, with his efforts to turn around the Japanese economy after decades of stagnation.
And, as you mentioned, Abenomics is something that's now a term that the entire world is familiar with. But for Japan going forward, this particular incident, the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, is something that they're never going to forget. I was also reading some data, and the fact that this is so shocking for the people of Japan, Tim, is the fact that this has been the first assassination of a sitting or a former Japanese premier since the day of pre-war militarism in the 1930s. So since then, this is the first such incident of an assassination, and that too in full public view.
That's correct. It would be the first assassination of a prime minister in almost 100 years, as far as I know. There's been other incidents after the war, but not against a prime minister. And we spoke earlier about some of the lighter security arrangements around such figures. I came across former Prime Minister Suga while he was still Prime Minister, just randomly, and he was only surrounded by a handful of security at the time. I also bumped into former Prime Minister Koizumi, and he was very approachable. I don't think he had any security around him at the time, and I was able to chat with him briefly, shake his hand. And so these arrangements are a reflection of the safety that the society here in Japan takes pride in. And I think many Japanese are asking themselves today, after seeing this horrific assassination, is this really the kind of country we live in? Do we live in a country with these kinds of assassinations of political figures? It just seems like a dream. It doesn't seem real.
I think the reality, unfortunately, is sinking in. That it's not about which country we live in. We live in a world, really, where this kind of now gun violence seems to be becoming a slow and harsh reality that we need to come to terms with. Something that you mentioned, Tim, about how you've been able to approach so many leaders in Japan. It's something that many of us can't relate to, because across the world, it's unheard of for any political leader to be going around with such minimal security. But that perhaps explains what happened to Shinzo Abe as well. He had, yes, some security detail. That's how they also managed to nab the suspect here. But there are so many questions about how the suspect managed to get so close to him. And if you look at really the footage that's emerged, he was wandering about for quite some time, waiting to take that shot, waiting for Shinzo Abe to really start speaking, and then fired at him. I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to the medical bulletin, but they've spoken about Shinzo Abe being shot at twice from behind, one towards the base of the neck and the other in the chest.
That's right. Clearly, the security situation today in Nara was a very porous security perimeter. It seems to have happened in a sort of intersection of Nara City, which is a very popular tourist destination, a very laid-back city full of Buddhist temples, not the kind of place you would expect to see violence, political violence on a scale like this. And clearly the suspect was waiting for his chance. He brought along his improvised firearm. Who knows how long ago that was made? Was he a ticking time bomb, just waiting to go off? But what he said so far doesn't shed any light on his motives. And so the only thing we have to go on are these images that we've seen of the scene.
Okay, Tim, as we get all the latest information that's coming in on the story right now, there's, of course, a lot of focus on the investigation as well. What kind of a high-level inquiry are we really talking about here? We've raised several aspects in our conversation itself about security for political leaders, about a need clearly to review that in view of what's happened with Shinzo Abe. Are those things that already have started moving?
I'm sure this investigation is taking place at the highest levels, obviously by the Nara Prefectural Police, which Nara is the prefecture in which this attack happened. And I'm sure they are coordinating with all the other relevant authorities. One thing I would point out that the security around sitting prime ministers is quite significant. It's a big deal when they go to and fro in Japan and overseas, of course. Former prime ministers, though, as I mentioned before, I came across Prime Minister Koizumi, a very almost no security that I saw. Today, with the unfortunate events around former Prime Minister Abe. So there seems to be a difference between sitting and former prime ministers in the country here in Japan. It does not seem to be the situation, for example, in the United States, where, as you know, former presidents of the United States have quite a powerful security detail around them, I believe, for the rest of their lives. So this is something that Japan's security authorities are surely reviewing now.
Okay, Tim, I appreciate you joining us here on India Today. We're going to let you go for the moment, but we will keep coming across to you for all those updates that are coming in right now. There's going to be a lot of focus on the investigation. And that one question all of us are asking, why was Shinzo Abe assassinated in the manner that he was by the shooter? Let's round up for you all the big updates, the top developments on the story. The confirmation that tragically came in about 40 minutes back. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has passed away. He was shot at during a campaign speech in Nara city. Hospital officials say he had no vital signs when he was brought in. He was already unconscious, and despite many blood transfusions, he could not be saved.
To understand. And another point.
Shinzo Abe is survived by his wife, Aki. She was spotted earlier in the day at the hospital where the former Japanese Prime Minister was rushed to the Nara Medical University. The man who shot at Shinzo Abe and killed him has been identified as 40-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. Japanese police have confirmed that Yamagami is an ex-maritime self-defense officer. He shot former Prime Minister Abe from behind, reportedly with a shotgun. The assassin is a resident of Nara city. Tetsuya has been charged with attempt to murder and is currently being questioned. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has offered his condolences, saying, and I quote, "I'm shocked and saddened beyond words at the tragic demise of one of my dearest friends." India has also declared a one-day national mourning. As the entire world just hours ago was praying for Shinzo Abe, China had shockingly celebrated this assassination. Chinese social media users hailed the assassin as a hero and celebrated the attack on Shinzo Abe. This largely because Abe always took a hard stand on Taiwan and time and again refused to give in to China's pressure during his tenure as Prime Minister. Now, who is the man who shot dead, who's assassinated the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe? He's a 41-year-old and he's been taken into custody. He shot at Shinzo Abe twice while Abe was delivering his speech in the city of Nara in western Japan. The suspected shooter was nabbed and taken into custody for shooting at Abe. Police have revealed that the suspect is a 41-year-old. Tetsuya Yamagami is his name. He's a resident, a resident of Nara city, where Shinzo Abe was. Tetsuya Yamagami is a former member of Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force. That's essentially the equivalent of the Navy. So he was very much trained in using firearms. At this point, police has also confirmed that they've seized a shotgun at the site, which the attacker, the assassin, was apparently holding on to. Tetsuya's home has been raided by cops. Yamagami told investigators that he was dissatisfied with Abe and targeted him with an intention to kill. But at this point, there are very contradictory comments, so there's no clear motive that he's referred to. He's saying he aimed to kill him. He didn't have any problem with his politics, but was dissatisfied with him. What did he mean by that? No one knows. So he's still being questioned right now. Police sources have confirmed that Shinzo Abe was shot from behind with the shotgun.
This is Yamato Saidaiji Station, West Gate in Nara City. It's been nearly 2 hours after the incident. The traffic circle in front of the station is still crowded with people. And police is continuing investigation and examination of the assault. A man in his 20s from Mie Prefecture who watched the development says that he heard 2 gunshot sounds when Abe was making a speech and before he collapsed onto the ground. And he was totally freaked out when he watched that development. That was Yamato Saidaiji Station.
Elections are being held. This is the very foundation of democracy. And such an incident took place. It is barbaric and malicious, and it cannot be tolerated. We will do everything we can. I would like to use the most extreme words available to condemn this act.
So that was a briefing by the Japan Prime Minister before it was confirmed that Shinzo Abe had passed away. Let's get you some of the defining images, horrifying images that's emerged of the attack, the assassination of the former Japanese Prime Minister. Shinzo Abe was shot at in Nara City while he was making a campaign speech. He collapsed as soon as he was shot at. Mid-speech, suddenly 2 shots were fired at him. The shooter, who you see on your screens there, has been identified as 41-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. He's a former member of Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force, the equivalent of the Navy, so he knew how to use these firearms. So you can see the moment that he was captured, overpowered by security guards present on ground there. Seconds after he fired at Shinzo Abe, the assassin was apprehended. The gun used to shoot Shinzo Abe has also been recovered. At this point, it's being said that this was a homemade weapon. You can see the black tape that he'd in fact used to hold the entire weapon together. The shooter was also seen lurking around the street just before he shot at Shinzo Abe. So clearly this was planned. You can see him with a sling bag watching and waiting for Shinzo Abe to start speaking. And soon after he was shot at twice, intense efforts were made to save the former Prime Minister of Japan. Shinzo Abe was airlifted out of where the attack had happened for treatment after he was shot at. But unfortunately, he couldn't be revived. So the demise of Shinzo Abe comes as a huge shock for the entire world. And the kind of videos that are emerging of the attack itself, of the assassination, shows how Shinzo Abe was shot from behind. He was speaking and suddenly mid-sentence, the shooter, 41-year-old Tetsuya, pulls out his weapon and shoots at Shinzo Abe twice. Shinzo Abe immediately collapsed to the ground, and the attacker tried to flee. Security personnel there immediately managed to catch him, but Shinzo Abe collapsed with his shirt clearly smeared in blood. Now, the latest communication that also came in from the hospital is that he suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one at the base of his neck, the other in his chest, very close to his heart, and he lost a lot of blood almost immediately. At that spot, the fire department was present. They tried to administer CPR to him, but they confirmed that Shinzo Abe wasn't breathing and that his heartbeat stopped while he was being airlifted to the hospital after the gunshot wounds. And as I mentioned, he was administered CPR right after he fell to the ground after that shooting, but they couldn't revive him. He immediately suffered a cardiac arrest. The kind of videos that have emerged from the spot showed several ambulances, emergency response teams immediately kicking in, trying to rescue the former Japanese Prime Minister. Tetsuya Yamagami, the 41-year-old man who has assassinated the former Prime Minister of Japan, a resident of Nara City, has been arrested. At this point, first he was taken into custody on suspicion of attempted murder. That charge will now change to murder.
He was making his speech, and from behind, a man approached And we were watching from above, and the first shot was just like a bazooka, like toy-like gun. And nobody collapsed. He was still, and nothing happened. But with the second shot, we could see gunpowder, and we could see the smoke coming out. It was the same gun, yes. And after the first shot, he kind of went back. And with the second shot, Mr. Abe collapsed. And people were conducting CPR. And many of the people around him were attending to him. What did it look like? He was wearing a gray T-shirt and a khaki color pants, and he was just out of energy. He was just standing. He didn't run away or anything. He was just standing there, and the security police, I think, such people were there to surround him, but he didn't even attempt to run, and he just got arrested.
And Shinzo Abe's assassination has shocked the entire world. He succumbed, unfortunately, to the injuries, the 2 gunshot wounds that he suffered and inflicted after 41-year-old Tetsuka Yamagami shot at him. This happened in the city of Nara. Remember that the shooter is currently in custody of the police, is being questioned about why he targeted and why he assassinated the former Japanese Prime Minister. And so far, his answers have been extremely vague, saying that he was dissatisfied with the former Prime Minister, but at the same time didn't have any problem with him politically. So all of this, of course, has led to a lot of questions of why he targeted the former Prime Minister. But he sent a very clear message that he aimed to kill. Unfortunately, he's been successful in his assassination attempt on the former Prime Minister. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also expressed his grief, condemning Abe's assassination. As a mark of respect, Prime Minister Modi has announced a one-day national mourning. That's tomorrow, the 9th of July, for former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Reports say that Abe was in a state of cardiac arrest upon arrival in the hospital. He was already unconscious. The hospital is confirmed.
Dr. Fukushima now speaks on the condition of former Prime Minister Abe. He has been transferred to hospital 12:20 on arrival. He has had no vital signs. And we conduct resuscitation measures. However, unfortunately, 5 p.m., he has passed away. And there have been gun wounds in 2 locations in the neck, and there have also been subcutaneous hemorrhage that has been observed. And we have conducted blood transfusion. However, unfortunately, we have not been able to sustain his life. And that will conclude the explanation.
The world is in shock today over what's happened currently in Japan, and we've lost a global leader. Shinzo Abe passing away. Tributes are pouring in. We're going to be tracking very closely all the latest updates on the investigation as we piece together all the videos that have emerged of that horrific shooting, that assassination of the former Japanese Prime Minister. Stay with us here on India Today.
You are watching India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India Today.
The UK-Rwanda asylum policy was introduced under the Economic Development Partnership in April this year. The UK-Rwanda asylum policy will be introduced as a pilot project for a period of 5 years. The European Court of Human Rights will hear the legalities involved in the policy next month. What is the need for UK-Rwanda asylum policy? The policy has been introduced as a measure to prevent the loss of life that happened because of dangerous crossings. In 2021, over 28,000 refugees entered the United Kingdom. In 2020, 8,500 people entered the territory in boats. These people took help from human smugglers and illegal traffickers. In fact, one of the prime reasons why Brexit happened is the influx of refugees in the European countries. In 2015, more than 1 million migrants and refugees trespassed the European territory. The United Kingdom is ready to make a payment of £120 million to Rwanda. This would cover the cost of housing and integration of the asylum seekers till their applications are processed. Countries like Australia, Israel, and Denmark have also established such policies. However, they were criticized and opposed for being cruel.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India Today. You are watching India Today.
Let's get you the latest reaction coming in from TMC MP Mawa Moitra. Unsurprisingly, she remains defiant. Mawa Moitra has shared a poem by another user on Twitter. Essentially, the message from this poem that she's put on Twitter says the Sanghis who are abusing have nothing in their brain. They don't understand religion. How will they understand goddess Ma Kali, my Kali, your Kali? How will they understand? This tweet was deleted right after. So Mawa Moitra first putting out another poem in her defense and saying that these Sanghis don't understand your and my Ma Kali, and then she's deleted, in fact this tweet was deleted by the user. Mawa Moitra had actually shared this poem. So at this point, the TMC MP trying to get a defense up by sharing this poem, then had to face this moment when the user actually deleted the post. So this is the reaction that's come in from Mawa Moitra. Remember that yesterday too, amid all of these protests and showdown, she tweeted out a poem which she said was from a Twitter user. This time around too, she did the same thing, but the user clearly, as soon as Mawa Moitra shared it, decided to delete the original post, decided to delete the poem. But the information that we have from what the poem originally stated when it was still put up on social media was a message to, in fact, all those who've been questioning her. And her message is essentially that they don't understand my and your Ma Kali. Heat is clearly mounting on Mawa Moitra and her remark on Goddess Kali. While the BJP's hit the streets against the TMC MP's remarks, the clamour for Mamata Banerjee to take action against Mawa is only escalating. Multiple complaints, FIRs have been filed across the country over her remarks. From Bengal to Ranchi, protests were held by the BJP and Hindu groups against Mawa Moitra. The Bengal BJP has demanded that the TMC Supremo dismiss Mawa Moitra from the party. Both Mamata Banerjee and the Trinamool Congress have gone very publicly and categorically distanced themselves from Mawa's comments. But it stopped at that. No action has been taken against her. An FIR and several complaints across the country have been lodged against Mawa Moitra, saying that she's hurt religious sentiments.
In the beginning, we do not approve of our comment. Trinamool Congress has respect for all religions. Trinamool Congress does not want to get into any religious controversy, and that is party statement in all religious matters.
हिंदुओं के भावनाओं से खिलवाड़ हो रहा है। देखिए, कहीं से भी हमारी माँ, अगर कोई हमारी माँ को गाली देता है, ये कहीं से बर्दाश्त करने लायक नहीं है। उसी तरह काली माँ हमारी, हम सबकी माँ है, और उनको इस तरीके से दिखलाना, एक सिगरेट पीते हुए दिखाना, और साथ ही वो झंडा जो है, जो कहीं से ये माफ़ करने लायक नहीं है। और उस पर टीएमसी की जो सांसद है, वो उनकी और भावनाओं को भड़काने का काम की है, सारे हिंदुओं की भावनाओं को भड़काने की काम की है। तो मेरा मांग तो है कि उस सांसद पे भी पुरजोर कार्रवाई हो, उनकी भी गिरफ्तारी हो।
And trouble is mounting also for filmmaker Leena Manimekhalai. It's her film Kali that's in this eye of a storm. The Madhya Pradesh government has issued a lookout notice against Leena Manimekhalai, director of the film Kali. An application has also been sent across to the central government. The Madhya Pradesh government has also served an ultimatum to microblogging site Twitter. They've asked Twitter to essentially take down Leena's posts within 36 hours, or else the social media site will face action. This comes after multiple FIRs have been filed against Leena. She's been accused of hurting religious sentiments, of insulting Goddess Kali. The outrage is growing as protests were held in multiple states seeking a ban on the documentary, demanding the arrest of the filmmaker. Much like what's happening with Mawa Moitra, here too Leena Manimekhalai is defiant. She's refused to apologize or pull down her poster.
ऐसी नराधम शक्तियां जो नक्सलवाद और वामपंथ से ओतप्रोत शक्तियां हैं, ये हमेशा विदेशों में बैठकर कभी ये खालिस्तान का नारा दे देती हैं, कभी देश को विभाजन करने के लिए एक धर्म को दूसरे के धर्म से लड़ाने की बात करती हैं। ऐसी विचारधारा का कोई स्थान भारतवर्ष में नहीं है।
कि हिंदुस्तान में किसी भी धर्म के देवी देवताओं का अगर किसी ने भी मजाक उड़ाया तो वो बोलने की आज़ादी नहीं, वो लोगों के दिल को छूती है और लोगों के दिल पे कुठाराघात करती है, लोगों की भावनाओं को खराब करती है, और हम वह कतई बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे।
All right, let's move on and get you all the updates you need to know on the Maharashtra political drama, the Sena versus Sena war, which continues to escalate. The fight now is over who the real Shiv Sena is. While the Shinde faction has nearly 40 MLAs, Uddhav Thackeray clearly is digging in his heels. Addressing his party workers, Uddhav declared that no one can take the party away from him. Uddhav Thackeray dared Chief Minister Eknath Shinde and said no one can take the Shiv Sena party symbol, the infamous symbol of the bow and arrow. He also took a jibe at the rebels and said people who left the party are not true Shiv Senics. Remember that at this point, Uddhav Thackeray has been, dealt one blow after another. More than 55 corporators from the Kalyan Dombivli Municipal Corporation have joined the Shinde faction. Shiv Sena's Dombivli city president has also chosen to side with Eknath Shinde. Uddhav's faction's earlier petitions seeking suspension and disqualification of the rebel MLAs are pending before the Apex Court. They will be heard in a few days from now on July 11th. Uddhav Thackeray no doubt will be hoping and praying for some legal relief.
बताया गया कि उद्धव ठाकरे
नवीन चिन्हाचा विचार करा वगैरे अजिबात नाही, कारण ती करण्याची गरजच नाहीये। हे मी मुद्दामून तुम्हाला सर्वांना एकत्र बोलून ठामपणे सांगतोय की शिवसेनेपासून धनुष्यबाण कोणीही वेगळा करू शकत नाही। हे घटनात्मक किंवा कायदेशीर जे अभ्यासक आहेत त्यांच्याशी बोलून मी आपल्याला सांगतोय. उगाचच माझ्या मनातलं बरं वाटावं म्हणून बोलत नाहीये.
And that's all we have time for on this broadcast. Stay with us here on India Today. Coming up in just a few moments from now, all the updates on the biggest story of the day, the shocking and tragic assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
You are watching India Today.
आ गई? कैसा रहा दिन?
बहुत अच्छा.
कोई वीडियो गेम कवर करने गई थी ना?
वीडियो गेम नहीं माँ, ई-स्पोर्ट्स.
ई-स्पोर्ट्स?
माँ, ई-स्पोर्ट्स is just like any other competitive sport. इसमें ना वो सब फीलिंग्स है जो किसी भी और स्पोर्ट्स में है. इसमें इमोशन है, इसमें एंगर है, इसमें सैडनेस है, इसमें हैप्पीनेस है, इसमें कमराडरी है. ये सिर्फ गेम नहीं, ये ई स्पोर्ट्स का प्रीमियर लीग ESPL है.
Today is, the launch to the world of a fully operational urban airport. The first time ever in the world that there's an operational piece of infrastructure of this kind.
I think you'll see some operations this decade, but I think the 2030s will really be the decade of advanced air mobility, and you'll really start to see this be more ubiquitous from that point on.
Everyone's busy finding what's trending. You're busy finding out why. India Today, for those who research before reacting. Download the India Today app now.
You are watching India Today.
I don't read the news. I read between the lines to tell you the true version of events. The true story of our times. To document grief, the toughest assignment for any journalist to be from those who matter.
Women politicians going to stick up for each other.
Of those who should matter. I document the truth. I don't distort the truth. I don't glamorize the truth. I don't gloss over the truth. The ghosts of India's contentious medieval history have come knocking again. I hustle for the truth. On the ground, in the newsroom, in the studio. I don't try to grab eyeballs. I inform you to make you
See the Point.
To the Point with Preeti Chaudhary. At these times, only on India Today.
You are watching India Today.
Very good evening. You're watching India Today with me, Nabila Jamal, taking you through the top news. First, the headline. 67-year-old former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been confirmed dead after being shot twice in the chest. World now in mourning. Shinzo Abe attacker arrested, identified as 41-year-old Yamagami Tetsuya, who is a local of Nara city. He admits that he aimed to kill Abe. And Prime Minister Modi's condolences over the death of his dear friend. He says in his Twitter post, "Dear friend Shinzo Abe, saddened by his death beyond words." These are the words of Prime Minister Modi, announces one-day national mourning. Sena versus Sena war explodes. Uddhav Thackeray dares Eknath Shinde to take the bow and arrow symbol, moves the Supreme Court against Shinde's appointment as Chief Minister. And Kali quake jolts Mahua Moitra. TMC now mulling over action against the MP. Madhya Pradesh government wants a lookout circular to be issued against filmmaker Leena Manimekalai. All right, India Today's big scoop, the inside scoop on Abe's assassination. Abe's killer used a homemade gun. As per latest reports here that India Today right now is tracking, a homemade gun, we believe, has been used to assassinate former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Improvised firearm used to murder Shinzo Abe. The killer used zip gun to assassinate the ex-Japan Prime Minister. This is the latest update that we have here at this point. We believe that Shinzo Abe was gunned down by his assassin using a homemade rifle. Now, who this man was with regards to what was his intention and motive to carry out this assassination yet remains to be established. But here, from the latest information that we bring to you right here on India Today, Abe's killer used a homemade gun. This is the latest piece of information that we get. You see that visual on your screens there, where that pistol, we believe that there was a shotgun, a homemade gun that was fully wrapped in plaster, in tape, to hold that weapon together. That's the weapon that was used to kill Shinzo Abe. Highly unfortunate, as Shinzo Abe struggled for life. In fact, the doctors tried hard to save Shinzo Abe, but unfortunately he succumbed. Just moments earlier, news came in that Shinzo Abe now has been declared dead. He really struggled to survive. Geeta Mohan joining us live for more on that. Geeta, a quick word on Abe's killer. The assassin, we believe, has used a homemade gun. This is the latest piece of information that we get here, and we see that visual on our screens as well. It looks like a shotgun, a homemade gun that was wrapped in tape to hold it together. Give us some more information on this weapon that was used to kill.
Well, the weapon that was modeled as a shotgun was homemade, is what we're given to understand. The assassin, a maritime was a part of the maritime forces and so was well trained in weaponry in most probability, and the reason why he could make this shotgun at home. And it was a very serious blow to Shinzo Abe when the first gunshot reached his heart and damaged his heart. That's the medical bulletin. 2 wounds, both shots at close proximity. That's why he did not miss his target. Shinzo Abe was his target. The assassin has, according to local media reports, has told police authorities that he intended to kill Shinzo Abe because he was not happy with Shinzo Abe's policies. And he did that at a very close proximity to Abe, is the reason why there were no misses. Both the gunshots went right into Abe's body, one very close to his neck and the other from the back through his heart, and had damaged his heart. So the medical officials say that they tried to revive him. They tried very hard to give him blood transfusion. His vitals were not responding even as he was brought into the hospital. And once Aiki Abe, that's the wife of Shinzo Abe, reached the hospital, the official announcement of his death was made. So very tragic incident, Nabila. It is going to have a huge impact in many ways than one on Japan and Japan's politics. Also, how Japan views itself as a country that is safe, that is in many ways than one a no-weapon zone, no-gun zone. But no longer, because if there are trained Marines, if they're trained maritime officials who then can make guns and use it against the political leadership, that certainly is a serious concern. So how the security apparatus works in Japan within the security blanket and cover given to leadership of Japan is certainly something that they will be looking into and reviewing.
You know, it's shocking that the man who killed Shinzo Abe was a former soldier. So he may have been very well trained, and the fact that this was a homemade gun, we believe there's a larger conspiracy and a motive and a plan to carry out this assassination. Geeta, do stay with us. This 41-year-old man assassinated the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has collapsed while giving a speech in the city of Nara in western Japan after being shot twice. The suspected shooter was nabbed, taken into custody for allegedly attempting the murder. Police have now revealed that the suspect is 41 years old, Tetsuya Yamagami, a resident of Nara City in Japan. Tetsuya Yamagami is a former member of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. It is known that the police official seized a shotgun at that site, which the suspect was apparently holding. The shooter, in fact, what we believe, the shooter houses also many of those houses, especially of the shooter and possibly some of those suspects, were all raided by the cops as part of the investigation. In fact, the shooter Yamagami has told investigators that he was dissatisfied with Abe and targeted him with an intention to kill. So this was indeed pre-planned. According to the police sources now, Abe, who's about 41 years old, has shot, in fact, we believe that the assassin has shot Abe right from behind, gunning him twice. After much struggle and hours of attempting to save him, unfortunately, just a few moments ago, we believe that Shinzo Abe has been declared dead.
This is Yamato Saidaiji Station, Westgate in Nara City. It's been nearly 2 hours after the incident. The traffic circle in front of the station is still crowded with people. And police is continuing investigation and examination of the assault. A man in his 20s from Mie Prefecture who watched the development says that he heard 2 gunshot sounds when Abe was making a speech and before he collapsed onto the ground. And he was totally freaked out when he watched that development. That was Yamato Saidaiji Station.
Elections are being held. This is the very foundation of democracy. And such an incident took place. It is barbaric and malicious, and it cannot be tolerated. We will do everything we can. I would like to use the most extreme words available to condemn this act.
All right, this is the big update that we're currently tracking. India Today's Inside Scoop on Abe's assassination. Abe's killer used a homemade gun, the improvised firearm used to murder Shinzo Abe. The killer used a zip gun to assassinate the ex-Japanese Prime Minister. So clearly, this appears to be a whole planned and executed assassination, which this man was successful in pulling off. In fact, he's arrested by the police in quick succession. Soon after the assassination attempt, the police were seen rushing towards him and pinning him down, arrested him quickly. In fact, from what he has admitted to the police is that he wasn't happy with several of Shinzo Abe's policies and his ideas and targeted him with an intention to kill. This is precisely what Yamagami, the assassin, has said to the police. But from what we hear now, which all the more leaves us shocked at a time when we know that Japanese to buy weapons or guns in Japan is incredibly impossible. There's a thorough check that's done usually for anyone who wants to purchase a weapon, a gun particularly. So it wouldn't have been easy for Yamagami had he planned to assassinate Shinzo Abe. This possibly was the only way out, to make a homemade gun. And that's precisely what he's done using all his knowledge as an ex-soldier. We believe that he has managed to manufacture a shotgun by himself at home. And this is how it looks like on our screens. In fact, this is the latest information as we get. Abe's killer has used a homemade gun, improvised firearm used to murder Shinzo Abe. Let me quickly cut across to Ankit, joining us right from the newsroom for a little clarity on that. Ankit, this weapon that we see here on our screens, which is wrapped in a tape, looks like a shotgun. And from the latest information of the police, we believe it was a homemade weapon.
Well, one of the questions that is being asked in the aftermath of assassination of Prime Minister Abe is that how come in a country like Japan, which has one of the lowest gun violence related cases, remember only 0.6% out of 100 possess a gun in Japan. So the question is being asked, how can somebody carry out a high profile political assassination in the middle of a city of a former Prime Minister of Japan using a gun? So what we have done is we are now using the visual evidences that we have collected by local media, and we are trying to understand what kind of gun was used in this incident. So this is the accused, or the person who shot the former Prime Minister of Japan, and this is the weapon that was used. Now what we have done is we have broken this one piece of evidence that we have and try and understand what kind of weapon this is. So if you see this is a sample of the pipes that has been used, and that they have now been covered, if you see here, by duct tapes. So it looks like some kind of pipe gun. Now there's a term for it. It's called a zip gun. If you read the history of how these kind of amateur guns are made, there are history of these kind of guns being used all over in prisons across Europe and USA, where iron pipes have been used with explosives such as matchboxes, match heads, electric bulbs, these kind of things. Now, if you see this part, these are the metal pipes which have been covered by duct tapes. This is the wooden block to provide stability, and if you focus on this part, this appears to be a lithium battery. This is very important. Why? Because this battery is now used to provide detonation, to provide ignition, because there is no other trigger. So this is used as a trigger to fire. Remember, all this can be, if you search over internet, this is also called an internet gun. How to make such kind of guns, the information related to that is available all over internet. So it's a new threat, it's a new kind of threat that is now being, faced by security agencies, where anybody who has some kind of experience, like this person who has a history of serving in the armed forces, can actually assemble a gun. Now the flip side of these kind of amateur guns is that they are not very accurate. They cannot be fired from a very large distance. That's why he had to get extremely close to the former Prime Minister, and this is how probably what we believe the former Prime Minister of Japan has been assassinated.
You know, Ankit, at this point, questions could be asked whether this man who's an ex-soldier could have already received training. Since he was a part of the army, he would have known very well to come out with a handmade gun of this nature. This could have been helpful. A training from the army itself could have been largely helpful for him to pull this off.
Well, the fact that he comes from an armed forces background should definitely help. I'm sure these kind of details will come up during the course of the investigation. But what we are trying to show here is that this is one of the first cases when an amateur gun, or what we are calling as an internet gun, is being used to carry out a high-profile political assassination. Of course, he must have has some kind of information. But if if anybody even Googles how to make a zip gun on internet, they will find enough information, and with enough motivation and the kind of skill set he must have had while his tenure in the armed forces, he must have those kind of experiences must have helped. I'm sure these kind of information will come up while as the investigation progresses. But what we can conclusively say at this point is that this is not an automatic gun, this is not a factory produced gun, this is not a 3D printed gun that many people on the internet are writing about. This looks like, and what we can, what we're showing here is, this looks like a homemade zip gun, also called the internet gun, which appears to be, made at home with raw materials such as simple pipes, duct tapes, explosives, etc.
But, it's shocking and surprising how the man has actually managed to pull it off. He got his target right on point. He managed to shoot Shinzo Abe right in target, and unfortunately he's dead today, but he's pulled off this assassination with such ease.
That's where the proximity matters. A question is being asked always whenever there is a VIP movement or a VIP or VVIP program is held, that why do you need such parameters? In India, if a high-profile event is happening, you will see there are 2, 3, 4 layers of security. This is precisely the reason why during high-profile setup, high-profile events, there are at least 2 or 3 parameters, security parameters, at least 2 or 3, so that even if somebody manages to sneak in with a weapon such as this, such as a zip gun, they will not be able to, in that case, target the victim. In this case, however, we have seen in the local media that the assassin managed to, get very close. He had a clear shot, and what also makes it interesting is that most of the zip guns that you see, they are usually single barrel guns. This is a double barrel gun. He has used 2 pipes, so that must include some kind of expertise. And what follows is that, of course, the local security agencies, the investigative agencies will, will carry a thorough investigation. The forensics will get involved. But what it appears right now is that the proximity that this person managed,
really helped.
That really helped.
Well, the assassin right now, the hands of the police, they're trying to understand what was his motive, if there are more people behind him, if this is a larger conspiracy. All those details will possibly emerge in due course. But Ankit, thank you very much for joining us on that. Now, former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's assassination has really shocked the world. Abe succumbed to injuries just hours after he was shot at twice with a shotgun while delivering his speech in the city of Nara. Japanese police have now arrested the 41-year-old Yamagami Tetsuya in Nara city for allegedly attempting murder, and have also now seized the weapon. Of course, now he has been charged with murder. Since Shinzo Abe, unfortunately, is no more, Prime Minister Narendra Modi came forward expressing his grief, condemning Abe's assassination. As a mark of respect, the Prime Minister has announced a one-day national mourning on the 9th of July 2022 for former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Reports say that Abe was in a state of cardiac arrest upon arrival at the hospital. Abe was gunned down, even as Japan is known to have the world's strictest gun laws. Despite that, we believe this man has managed to make a weapon right at his home and pulled off this assassination with such ease.
Dr. Fukushima now speaks on the condition of former Prime Minister Abe. He has been transferred to hospital 12:20 on arrival. He has had no vital signs. And we conduct resuscitation measures. However, unfortunately, 5 p.m., he has passed away. And there have been gun wounds in 2 locations in the neck, and there have also been subcutaneous hemorrhage that has been observed. And we have conducted blood transfusion. However, unfortunately, we have not been able to sustain his life. And that will conclude the explanation.
So this is near Yamato Saidaiji Station, north side, Nara Prefecture. And this is the site where Abe was shot. And I'm about 100 meters away from where he was shot. So this is the map. This is around the north side of the Yamato Saidaiji Station. I'm standing around here. And Abe was shot at this place. So Abe, around 11 p.m., he came out from the north side of the Yamato Saidaiji Station, standing here to give out speech. However, around a bit past 11:30 p.m., a man approached and two gunshot-like sounds were heard, and then Abe collapsed onto the ground with bleeds.
This is Yamato Saidaiji Station, West Gate in Nara City. It's been nearly 2 hours after the incident. The traffic circle in front of the station is still crowded with people. And police is continuing investigation and examination of the assault. A man in his 20s from Mie Prefecture who watched the development says that he heard two gunshot sounds when Abe was making a speech and before he collapsed onto the ground. And he was totally freaked out when he watched that development. That was Yamato Saidaiji Station.
All right, let me quickly cut across to Geeta Mohan joining us for more on that. Geeta, at this point, we know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Shinzo Abe had a great relationship. Both the countries, in fact, bilateral ties only deepen with Shinzo Abe leading the front. And here, Prime Minister Modi also now announcing a day of national mourning. Give us the sentiments today that India holds for Shinzo Abe.
Well, people who have actually, when Shinzo Abe was in India, the cities that he traveled to, particularly the state of Gujarat, people over there certainly would remember how the grand welcome that he received in India, and the kind of color and the kind of fanfare and pomp and circumstance with which he was welcomed to India. So there is a lot of that, but the strategic circles, the foreign policy circles such as us, we know the contribution of Shinzo Abe in enhancing India-Japan ties, in not just enhancing, but also securing the entire region and pushing for security of the entire region, be it the Indo-Pacific or certain countries bilaterally. So he worked very hard, and the message he'd started giving out that message, Nabila, long ago in the 90s, when he actually spoke of in first and early 2000, when he actually came out with the idea of the quadrilateral. And since then, there have been many formats, not just the Quad, many formats where he's engaged the region to secure the region from aggressive posturing or aggression of particularly China. It has been a problem area. And you see that, and it reflects in the kind of celebratory messages that you see in China on Chinese social media related to Shinzo Abe's death. That certainly is stark. It is disconcerting. It's quite disturbing, but it is also true that the hostilities and animosity between China and Japan is way deeper now than ever before. Also because Japan has taken a very strong stand in where it wants to be, how it wants to move, and who it wants to move with. And in that, this Quad is certainly messaging, and Shinzo Abe was the architect of that Quad. Again, in terms of bilaterals, in terms of engagement with India, it is not just a loss for the country, but maybe personally a major loss for Prime Minister Modi, because of all the leadership or leaders he's met and had engagements with, he did consider Shinzo Abe very close. The reason why, when the Quadrilateral Summit took place in June in Japan this year, while he was not the prime minister, and it was Kishida who attended the quadrilateral meeting, he did take time out. He took time out to really go and meet with Shinzo Abe separately. He met with two prime ministers, but Shinzo Abe, a very important person in ensuring enhancement of ties between India and Japan. So a major loss. Also, remember, he was a young man. He was not very old. He had resigned in 2020 owing to health conditions. And then Suga took over, and after which Kishida took over. But owing to health conditions, and now when you saw that his health improved a little, he was actually campaigning for his other friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
He was in Nara city campaigning for the upper house elections that were to take place on July 10th. Unlikely that Nabila will go through with the election now, given that former head of state has died, head of government has died in Japan. And so India is going to mourn. There is going to be a national mourning. We are observing national mourning tomorrow. Prime Minister Narendra Modi made that point. And also, again, a very important point over here. Of all the messages that you see of Prime Minister Modi and tweets for condolence messages that he puts across for world leaders, over here there were numerous messages that he put out. He was that shocked. He put out a personal message about how he was connected so personally with Abe and how Abe impacted him. He put out a message on Abe's contribution to not just regional but global politics, security structure. He put out a message then finally on the death, condoling the death of Abe, and then a message of national mourning. So levels and levels, it really goes to show the kind of importance India not just attaches to ties with Japan, but particularly to how Shinzo Abe played a very important and critical role. He was Prime Minister at a very critical juncture when it comes to Japan coming out on its own, becoming a huge global power and leader.
Absolutely, Geeta. Very, very sorry day today as we've lost out on one of the finest Prime Ministers, Shinzo Abe, who had great relations with India today. Thank you very much, Geeta, for joining us. I'm going to quickly round up on what really happened today, the top developments of this dastardly attack on former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Former Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has passed away. This is the latest coming in from the government of Japan. He was shot during a campaign speech in Nara city. Hospital officials say that he had no vital signs when he was brought into the hospital. Despite blood transfusion, he could not be saved. Shinzo Abe is survived by his wife, Aki. She was spotted earlier in the day at the hospital where the former Japanese Prime Minister was rushed to. And the man who shot at Shinzo Abe has been identified as 40-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. Japanese police has now confirmed that Yamagami is the ex-maritime self-defense officer. He shot former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from behind, reportedly with a shotgun. The assassin is a resident of Nara city. Tetsuya has been charged with murder and is currently being questioned. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has now condoled Abe's death, saying, "I am shocked, saddened beyond words at the tragic demise of one of my dearest friends." India has also declared one-day national mourning. And as the entire world now praying for Shinzo Abe, we see some groups within China on social media shockingly celebrating the attack. Chinese social media users, many of them hailing the assassin as a hero, celebrated the attack on former Japanese Prime Minister. Abe always took a hard stance on Taiwan and time and again refused to give in to China's pressure during his tenure as Prime Minister. All right, now former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has died hours after he was shot at in the city of Nara. Chilling videos now on your screens showing how Shinzo Abe was shot at from behind with a shotgun while giving a speech at a campaign event in western Japan. Abe collapsed moments after the attacker shot at him with his shirt smeared with blood. Fire department rushed to the spot and stated that Abe was not breathing. His heartbeat had stopped while he was being airlifted to the hospital after that gunshot wound. There were no vital signs reported soon after he was moved to the hospital. In fact, Abe was given CPR right after he fell on the ground after the horrific shooting. Visuals from the spot there shows several ambulances and emergency response teams that were trying hard to rescue him. The 41-year-old assassin, Tetsuya Yamagami, a resident of Nara city, has been arrested on suspicion of attempting to murder Shinzo Abe. And post the investigation, we believe the assassin has claimed or has admitted that he wasn't happy with Abe's policies, therefore he pulled off this crime with an intention to kill.
He was making his speech, and from behind, a man approached, and we were watching from above. And the first shot was just like a bazooka, like toy-like gun, and nobody collapsed. He was still, and nothing happened. But with the second shot, we could see gunpowder, and we could see the smoke coming out. It was the same gun, yes. And after the first shot, he kind of went back. And with the second shot, Mr. Abe collapsed. And people were conducting CPR. And many of the people around him were attending to him. What did it look like? He was wearing a gray T-shirt and a khaki color pants. And he was just out of energy. And he was just standing. He didn't run away or anything. He was just standing there. And the security police, I think, such people were there to surround him. But he didn't even attempt to run, and he just got arrested.
All right, let's quickly take you through some of those defining images of today. A tragic day indeed for Japan. Japanese Prime Minister was shot at in Nara city while he was making a campaign speech. He collapsed as soon as he was shot at. These are images where we see Shinzo Abe, who collapsed right to the ground soon after the gunshot. Now, the shooter has been identified as 41-year-old Tetsuya Yamagami. He is a former member of Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force. This man is said to have used a handmade gun to pull off this assassination. The shooter was apprehended immediately. The gun used to shoot Shinzo Abe has also been recovered. And this is the image that you see on your screens here. The gun, we believe again, a handmade, a homemade weapon, a shotgun that's wrapped in duct tape, only to hold it together. In fact, the shooter was also seen lurking around the streets just before he shot at Shinzo Abe. He was just about around the corner, waiting for Abe to start his speech and readying himself to kill his target. Intense efforts were made to save the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Soon after the gunshot, he was rushed to the hospital. Abe was airlifted for treatment while he was shot at. He was delivering a speech when he was shot at, and right after collapsed, and the rescue teams rushed to the spot and did say that there were no vital signs at that moment. They still rushed him to the hospital, unfortunately later declared him dead. Now, a new despicable law by some people in China. Its nationalists are now celebrating shooting of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, how the man succumbed to his injuries and almost hailing the assassination attempt, or the man who killed Shinzo Abe as their hero. Even as world prayed for Abe's recovery, many in China lauded this loss of enemy. In fact, the Chinese social media was flooded with celebratory texts and ill-timed jokes wishing Abe's death. Many Chinese nationalists were seen cheering the assassination bid. Some Chinese users, in fact social media users, wanted to congratulate as well as reward the apprehended shooter, hailing him as a hero. In fact, some comments also wanted the present Japanese Prime Minister and his Korean counterpart to also get assassinated in the similar fashion. China's mouthpiece, Global Times, has meantime blamed the right-wing forces in Japan for the attack on former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. China says that the attack on Abe can accelerate the revision of pacifist constitution and cause ripple effects to foreign policy like ties with China and the United States. Right on that note, I'm going to slip into a short break. We'll be right back with news and updates on the other side. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today.
With every sunrise comes new beginnings, new opportunities and new stories. And that's why we're first up. While you're sleeping, we're hard at work to ensure you get the perfect news shot every morning. Get you all the updates. Our morning mission to get you news that's fresh and packed with flavor. Watch First Up every weekday morning with me, Akshata Nandagopal, right here on India Today.
While instances of drone mishaps are plenty, India is pushing hard to put drones in mainstream use, especially to execute deliveries. A Delhi-based drone startup is offering its services to a healthcare company. They're carrying out trials for delivering essential medicines and critical lab samples in Kerala. First, the medicine and diagnostic sample is loaded in a temperature-controlled payload box, and then the payload box is loaded onto the drone. These drone trials were beyond the visual line of sight, directed by drone pilots from a command center. The drone traveled a distance of 30 kilometers through a predetermined route. Similar to helipads, these drones also have their takeoff and drop-off pads. In another instance, a Bengaluru-based delivery firm is also dabbling with drones on a trial basis to make grocery deliveries. The company has roped in 4 drone-as-a-service operators for these trials, which will be conducted in 2 phases. A Gurgaon-based drone startup may have laid the ground for postal drone deliveries as it successfully delivered a parcel in the Kutch region in Gujarat. It was a pilot project in collaboration with India Post. The drone flight traveled a distance of 46 kilometers in less than 30 minutes. The delivery was estimated to be 5 times faster than the speed of surface transportation. This drone delivery was among the longest single delivery flights made by a drone in the country. The most important factor of drone deliveries, beyond visual line of sight, has not been allowed by the government yet. But in 2021, the Ministry of Civil Aviation granted conditional exemption to 20 entities to conduct BVLOS experimental flights. The Prime Minister invited startups and manufacturers to make India a hub for drone technology during the Bharat Drone Mahotsav, which means deliveries will surely be more unmanned in future in India.
Wedding bells again for Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann. 6 years after divorce, Bhagwant Mann married Dr. Gurpreet Kaur in a close private affair in Chandigarh. This was his second wedding. Who is Dr. Gurpreet Kaur? 32 years old Gurpreet hails from a village in Pehowa area of Haryana's Kurukshetra. She is the youngest of the 3 sisters in her family. Gurpreet Kaur, whose nickname is Gopi, completed her MBBS from Maharishi Markandeshwar University 4 years ago. She is a practicing doctor and lives in Mohali with her family. Her father, Indrajit Singh Nath, is a farmer. As per media reports, he had previously worked as the Sarpanch of Madanpur village. Her mother is a homemaker. Gurpreet's uncle, in fact, Gurjinder Singh Nath, is a member of the Aam Aadmi Party. Nath had said that there were talks of marriage in the family for about 2 years. Bhagwant Mann's mother and sister chose Gurpreet to be Mann's bride-to-be. In fact, Gurpreet and Mann's families have known each other for at least 4 years as per sources. Apart from close family members, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and AAP leader Raghav Chadha also attended the wedding in Chandigarh. Bhagwant Mann's first marriage was with Inderpreet Kaur. They divorced almost 6 years ago. In 2015, Bhagwant Mann and his first wife Inderpreet Kaur filed for divorce with mutual consent in court. The comedian turned politician Bhagwant Mann entered politics in 2011. In 2014, he became an MP from Sangrur on an AAP ticket.
His first wife, Inderpreet Kaur, was present with him during the campaigning for 2014 Lok Sabha elections. Maan also won the election from Sangrur in 2019. In 2022, he took oath as the Chief Minister of Punjab. Bhagwant Maan's son, Dilshan Maan, is 17 years old and daughter Sirat Kaur Maan is 21 years old. Both of them live with their mother, Inderpreet Kaur, in the United States. They visited India in March this year to attend their father's swearing-in ceremony as the Chief Minister of Punjab. In fact, Maan's argument in his divorce application was that he wanted divorce because he wanted to focus on politics. Bhagwant Maan had said that he is unable to give his family any time because of politics. After the divorce, he wrote a post on social media. He said that he chose Punjab over his family. He is separating from his wife for politics. On the other hand, Bhagwant Maan's then-wife, Inderpreet Kaur, in her divorce application had said and given conditions that if Bhagwant Maan leaves India, shifts to California and leaves politics, then she will withdraw the divorce application. Well, now political leaders across parties have taken to social media to convey their best wishes. Even Twitterati reacted to the news with much joy.
Watching India Today.
All right, here's India Today's exclusive news break. Ahmedabad cops have uncovered online hate campaign. Cyber hate war against India over Nupur's remarks. Malaysian and Indonesian hackers have been targeting websites, Indian websites. Hackers have put out Nupur's personal details online. The Ahmedabad crime branch has said that Nupur Sharma incident, where Muslim hackers from Malaysia and Indonesia, post that, have started attacking through their cyber cells. In fact, they've been unleashing a war against India online. This is precisely what has been established. Two hacker groups, one called the Dragon Force Malaysia, the other called the Hacktivist Indonesia, both initiating cyber war against India. Both groups also appeal to Muslim hackers from all across the world and in fact, they've appealed to Muslim groups across the world to start a cyber attack on India. Post the Nupur Sharma incident, we're seeing the Ahmedabad cybercrime branch now saying that over 2,000 websites have been hacked by these hacker groups. Hackers and these groups now attacking India on multiple levels. In fact, they started with, of course, putting out Nupur Sharma's personal details online. They've also, in one regional channel of Assam, between live telecast, a Pakistan flag was shown. These are multiple ways that they've tried to infringe through cyber attacks. Thane police website was hacked, is what we believe. Personal details of Andhra Pradesh police was given out. Aadhaar card and PAN card of people have been leaked online. Let me quickly cut across to Saurabh, who's currently with the Ahmedabad cybercrime branch DCP, Amit Vasava. Saurabh, over to you. Give us the magnitude of this crime, the cybercrime, these attacks that are now being strategically carried out against India by foreign forces.
Well, absolutely, Nabila, and let me tell you, this is huge. This is a huge cyber war against our country, and this is done after the Nupur Sharma incident. And the hackers from all over the world are trying to unite and hack the important government websites of our country. The man who has decoded this whole incident, Cybercrime DCP Amit Vasava, is with us. Sir, what is this whole incident and how it was decoded?
So after the Nupur Sharma incident, there were two hacker groups who called upon all the Muslim hackers of the world to start a cyber war against India. These groups were Dragon Force of Malaysia and Hacktivist of Garuda of Indonesia. These two groups then started attacking a lot of government websites, and they were able to infiltrate many government, educational and industries website and leak a lot of data on dark web. For example, Andhra Police data of individual police persons was leaked. Then PAN card and Aadhaar card of several thousands of Indians had leaked online. Then Dish TV is a private company, its website was hacked. Then Times 8 Assam's channel. Just imagine during live channel, Pakistan's flag was shown on the channel's TV, and several messages by these hacker groups were shown. Similarly, Thane Police website was also hacked. So in response to such cyber aggression, what we did was completely different. It was basically not aggression by us, but what we did was to ethically hack 100 Malaysian websites and 70 Indonesian websites to show their vulnerability.